The revenge of By the Numbers here on Last Free Nation is of course brought to you by esports.bet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They are still running their bet forgiveness offer where if for your first time bet, if you make a bet up to 100 USDT and lose, then they will, if you go to their Discord, discord.gg/esportsbet and message the mod mail, say that Thorin or Last Free Nation sent you, they will credit your account with up to the 100 USDT that you placed the bet with. Basically, they forgive that first bet. As a pro tip, I'd suggest make the bet onto an underdog, maybe with 2 or 3 odds. That way, if you win on the underdog, you don't need the bet forgiveness. You've made out like a bandit. If you lose, you get to try again. And this time, no harm, no foul. You get a mulligan, right? Now let's get into the show.
Ahoy! Welcome to Last Free Nation. It's been my dream to cultivate a talent-owned company where the keenest and most creative minds in esports come together to provide honest and entertaining conversations, as well as hold the industry accountable to a higher standard. All your favorite shows and content previously under the name Insight on Esports, and a whole lot more, will now come aboard the Last Free Nation. That's right, in an industry where few are willing or bold enough to speak their mind, we will be your unshackled source for informative analysis, hilarious banter, unfiltered opinions, and authentic reporting across esports and beyond. Join our crew by following and subscribing to Last Free Nation on all social media platforms now. Get ready and join me and more salty souls in our crew as we embark on our maiden voyage with you, esports' true fans. Esports content as you know it is dead. Long live the Last Free Nation.
Chris is not still into the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris! He's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus!
Oh!
He does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera! The man, the myth, the beast! Zywoo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. Oh my God, Zywoo! Unbelievable!
Hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of Revenge of By the Numbers. It is a fresh week of Counter-Strike news to be going over here, and won't be doing it alone, of course. Thorin joining me on the high seas in the Counter-Strike landscape as we have set sail under a new flag, haven't we?
Yes.
How you doing,
Here's
man?
the thing, Semmler. This is, if people haven't noticed, obviously on this show, we're actually quite open with how our lives and our philosophies have changed. So one of the interesting things about the way certain terminology is very similar is me and Semmler back in the day, we were the dream of what every gamer would want to be. We were the nerds that grew up, but we were getting to play in the games we loved that give the same edgy humor that everyone used to love in the early days of the internet. And we were all about getting that skrill, getting our money on. But the thing is now, we're not about degeneracy. We're not about that lifestyle anymore. We're trying to get a very different type of booty. Pirate booty. See, that's a play on words. If you know,
I see what you
there
did there.
There you go.
Like the thing is, would you even know the reference now? I guess if you're like, I mean, because the thing is like One Piece, pirates, pirate booty, but like, dude, the reference. Fair enough. Yeah, well, I mean, that announcement came out this week. Pretty cool to see. Richard staying on board for the Four Horsemen, which is dope as well. He's also still kind of creating his own content on the side on his channel. And then
Also, I will just
Maui getting
clarify,
involved.
this is
So
technically the first time officially that me and Semmler have ever shared any booty.
what
That
happened
was
at the
phrased
after
very
parties?
carefully there, Semmler. Exactly. That's
That
phrased
was
very
very
carefully.
careful there, and I appreciate it. That's good. That's solid. The whatever happened in all those years of Counter-Strike degeneracy, I know. Not the case anymore. Don't have to worry about that. Obviously, we're all. I mean, like we pretty much. This is like the next phase. It feels like going into this sort of thing. I mean, we can talk about this idea that's now become a reality, which is that we're not really attending live events anymore, but it's still about creating the content. I mean, it's not like we've closed the door entirely on going to live events and participating, but it just doesn't seem like it's an option right now. And so really cool just to actually have like to start getting together a podcast idea where we could just group the shows together. I mean, thinking about it now, obviously when I saw it all come together and like the talent coming together and all that sort of thing, I was just having flashbacks to Room on Fire back in the day, except that now, there's actual content instead of it just being a bunch of talent, who are banding together for negotiation purposes with TOs. It's actually like, here is the content that you can actually build on and actually go forth and do something with. So it's cool, man. It's really exciting to see it come together. It's happy to see that it's finally, public.
What people won't know as well is this is actually something which could have happened under the Flashpoint brand. By the way, not only will they one day, every one of those team owners who ends up being legit, look back and go, what the fuck was I thinking? I had Thorin, not only like getting me players like a GM, a pipeline of the best talent, but also he was going to do all the content and he would have made a whole content platform that could have been its own business, spun out to make millions in revenue. And I turned that down. Why though? They'll one day look back on that and think they are so stupid. And the reason why is this, Semmler, is when they were in the idea of doing that, like every other company in esports, they were just super cynical. So one of the things that's happened many times over the years, I won't say who, but there are certain like media moguls in esports who buy up properties. They come along and they buy this site and that one. Then they do things like combine the Facebook followers and whichever one's the biggest account, they use that one. Like they know all the algorithm, all the tech, but because they're super cynical about numbers, they would always make me offers for my personal YouTube channel that would be like pretty much exactly like the right amount for that time period. But they never ever had the vision of offering me a little bit more. They would always just be very cynical, like, right, I'll give you like, I'll buy the whole thing and then I pay you like, let's say like 5K a month. And it's like, you know what, that might at the time have been a good deal. But what they never saw was what I saw, which is what if I can make it bigger? What if I can bring on more content and make and expand it out? I'd be a fool to have sold it for 5K, wouldn't I? So in the same sense, like this could have been a project elsewhere. If I'd have stayed with Flashpoint, it actually might have launched under their brand and initially been there. But
Certainly.
obviously I had my own dispute with Flashpoint. I told the story before. I basically told them to go fuck themselves with the contract that they offered me. It wasn't that it was an insulting amount of money, but the story I've always told is they just like made me a certain offer and then were literally, after literally sending me a contract to potentially sign Semmler, were just like, actually, maybe we want to negotiate that down a little bit. And I was like, there's no little bit. Like, this is the end of the negotiation. They're like, oh, what about the original? No, that is what you just said is the end of the negotiation. Like, goodbye. Like, I was already going to maybe be my last year anyway, but it's over now. So actually, what's funny to me is this. I couldn't know that I'd get it funded and all this. There's the other angle where we were going to go independent. People know the story. Before that Four Horsemen episode with Mick from Face It, some of the Face It people were our investors. They were the ones putting in 6 figures and putting in loads of money. That was what was going to pay people before we had the sponsors. Now we obviously have Esports Bet. So in that scenario as well, there's another that was like out of a movie, Semmler. That is like the devil making you fucking sell your soul. Because someone comes to you and they go, oh, you know, like it was literally, there's not a joke. We were going to sign the papers something like a day after we found out of nowhere they signed with the fucking Saudis. So that was one of those ones where it was like everyone else was telling me like, just do it anyway. Everyone's getting blood money in the industry. It was all that. And I was like, no, that is the devil, mate. He's just talking through you guys. So no, I'm going to have to say no. Even though it means this company doesn't get to start how I wanted to initially, I have to just start at a level below and trust that it can go there legit. I don't need to set. So there were so many ways and twists and turns where this could have actually come out through other mediums in slightly more limited capacity without having the same ownership and all that jazz. And the maddest thing is, by betting on ourselves and making the right choice, because I always say the thing I love about morals and principles is they're just a fucking compass for living in the world. You just look out, oh, actually, I'm not that same person, so I can't go that way. You guys are going this way. I've got to go this way, I'm afraid. And then if we meet up again later, cool. If we don't, then it wasn't for me. So I have to say, it's actually ended up, assuming this isn't like famous last words, it all collapses in on itself in a few years. It's actually ended up the best possible way for me with the creative control, the equity, you know. This is actually like almost the dream scenario, but you couldn't have known that initially if you went through the traditional methods. So yeah, I'm loving it, mate. It's actually gone almost without a hitch so far.
That's the idea of just striking out on your own rather than playing it by somebody else's rules or some other company's rules. I mean, that was actually really interesting, the timing of it all coming together, because there was talks about like coming together, making your own brand, making your own company, and then the whole Flashpoint thing. You really remember. It's actually kind of trippy because the Faceit, you know, because Flashpoint was Faceit, and so it was run by Faceit. Essentially, it was a Faceit product, and that was where Monty was tied in. That was where everything was tied in. So when you say that this could have all happened under the Flashpoint brand, I mean, that's true, because most of the people involved with this project going up to this point were Flashpoint people. And then it all kind of just, you know, pans out from there. They, you know, Faceit and get merged into ESL, and it all becomes one giant CSGO mess. Like the
an evil human centipede.
So, yeah, there you go. Just one step down after another. You know, but like that, the thing that was the, like the idea that I was playing around with earlier, though, when I was walking my dog, is just that where do you draw the line in this sort of scenario? I mean, I don't know. This is really just going to be like housekeeping kind of stuff, guys. But like, where do you draw the line in this scenario? Because if you don't want to work directly, like take direct investment, but you're still going to build your company on talking about a product that is funded by that kind of money, it's like, where do we draw the line? Like, how far do you go to remove yourself from the fact that, you know, the content that we're talking about here is still based on a product. Even if we aren't directly working with them, we're still talking about their product at the end of the day. Like, where do you sit on that one? Because right now, that's the kind of path that I'm on, where I'm trying to figure that out.
But I do think it's something I've thought about a lot this last year or so, when I knew that not only had already I worked, like essentially the work I do in League of Legends does actually advertise a product that directly enriches the Chinese economy. So it's not like that's not one of my particular big bugbears. It's more Richard's, you know, against the China angle. But I'm certainly not a fan, and I don't like a lot of the things I see over there. I mean, there's actually certain elements can be quite based, but there's certain elements that obviously I find horrifying and play right into all my sort of like 1984 fucking paranoia of like, what the hell? Like, so there is some of that, but the problem is basically for right now, it's okay. I feel like as you say, I feel like the line is just past where we are. Like, essentially, if we don't do this, when we can't ever actually interact with any sport, with any like mainstream hobby, couldn't even talk about movies, if you know what Hollywood's like and the things that they do and what they're promoting. So eventually, look, I'm not against that idea, Semmler. There is actually a world where one day I might be some sort of fucking throwback hermit type figure living in a fucking, not a cabin. I'll be living in a cool little stone house in the woods, not that far from a smaller town. And it's like, I'll just weigh up how much interaction do I want, how much modern things, how much old stuff. There is a world where I'm probably heading down that path, but I'm not quite there now. And so for the initial period, I think it can work. That's also one of the reasons, though, I will say, as to why I also think this company has ended up being way more than I initially anticipated. I understood the premise that one day I might need like business people to help me manage my stuff and my businesses, because that's another thing I ran myself ragged with for years. I did every single thing myself for like 8 years or something mental, which is too much. I should have had interns and secretaries and people like that way before. I was foolish not to, but I came from a poor background, so I actually didn't even understand concepts like, well, you just put it on your tax bill and they're essentially expensed. Like, I didn't even think of that. I was thinking, but I'd have to make this much to pay that. I came from a different background. I wasn't a business guy. So what I would say as well is this: there's also a world where that's one of the reasons why, like in your case, when people come on board this company and they're founders, they're getting equity in the company, because that also means after the initial period when it all vests, there might be a day in the future where maybe me and you don't make esports content, but we'll still have our investment in this company. This company can potentially still be a platform for other people who care about the games, and that can be like a passive income at that point in time. So I feel like there is a, put it this way, I'm thinking about the same thing. There is a world where at one point maybe I either gradually keep disconnecting or have to go a different route. It's just at that point in time, like I obviously then can't be, like I say, in any sort of mainstream thing. I'm gonna have to only talk about like obscure fucking like religious books from hundreds of years ago or something. So
That is, it
and
really
then
does
whatever I'm
feel
gonna
like
talk
you
about,
just
it can't be on
continually,
YouTube.
like
It's
one
gonna have to
step
keep
after
going.
another. Like you just keep, it's
Exactly.
just like, that's the pruning process that keeps happening right now for me, at least over the past few years, where it's just like, now I remove that bit, and now this, like it just keeps walking further and further away to the point where it really is, I'm so selective with what I spend my time on now, with what I watch. And so it almost feels like eventually you do hit that level where it's like, but how do you square that circle? How do you keep enjoying this one thing when you know that you're not taking part for these reasons here directly, but indirectly you're still benefiting from it? So do you need to just continuously just keep stepping back, like you say, until you wind up in a cabin in the woods? Or the other side of it is like, do you concede the ground, or do you actually stay active in it so that there is a source for an opposing view? And maybe you have to dirty yourself a little bit in the sense that you're still talking about something that is funded by that, but at least that you're there to provide like an opposing view in that sort of scenario, so that it isn't just an echo chamber of, sold out, like, right, of people who
I
are
agree.
not thinking these things, who are not trying to actually consider these things, and who would rather not think about these things entirely and just go about their day. Like,
No,
what do you?
like you say, it's a journey. Like we're not at the end yet. We don't know where we're going, but we just have a rough. It's a similar thing what I was saying. You have a compass, you have a rough idea. You're probably heading in this direction. And plus, who knows? Maybe people think we've gone crazy then, and we just disappear. And all I'm saying is, if you liked it from the front, maybe you will like it from the back. Whatever. Just a Zoomer reference there. Don't worry about it. That's a reference to the music these kids be banging.
That I mean, dude, it is still like like the daily reminder to just not argue with anybody online, because it's just going to be
Oh,
a
I know.
total waste of
I've gotten
time.
way better at that. Dude, you know how
You have
when
gotten better at
when
that,
I
man. You have
teased that
gotten
on
better at
this
that.
show a few episodes back, people probably thought I was just full of shit, right? Dude, mate, look at, like, I can already see the impact even on my mood. I'm way less fucking annoyed when I come on these shows now. I have got the lightness back to sort of my spirit, as it were.
The thing is, it does make like the petty grievances section a little hard to keep up, because I don't really care enough about any of
Yeah,
that anymore
exactly.
to have be like, man, this guy. Although I did notice a rat in I happened to look through my notifications today,
Come on.
and I did notice a rat in there, just Carmac, liking a tweet, and I was like, couldn't help yourself, huh, Carmac, you little rat scum. Like,
Hating
yeah.
on this project, presumably.
No, not on this project, on a different
Okay.
thing that I tweeted, where one of his employees, I guess, talked to, wrote back to me.
Oh,
I
was it
was like,
because you
dude, I'm
made
not
that
going to
thread
waste
about
any
what
time with
ESL
any
should
of this,
do?
because this is going to be pissing in the wind. This is total
No,
waste of
but
time.
didn't you
I
make a
just
Twitter
happened to
thread?
notice. I'm like, I know that avatar, and it's like, oh yeah, Carmac, got it.
Is this a reference, though? You made like a Twitter thread about something to do with ESL, didn't you?
No, no, it wasn't about ESL. It was about the Coof.
Oh, no, I don't. Oh, right. I thought this was about like the Twitter thread you made the other day. Fair enough. Well, yeah, listen, mate, that goes without saying. Like, spoiler, one of the other reasons why I don't fuck with the ESL at all is because they're German. And I don't know.
Yeah.
First of all, I used to have a comedic, semi-fake dislike of Germans. Now I have a fully legitimized one where if I just look at their country, my God, this is a fucking dystopia right now. Like, I don't even know what the apocalypse would look like for these guys at this point in time. It's already here. Like, they're already doing it. It's like it's some sort of managed fucking downfall. It's crazy, isn't it, mate? Like, so the idea that those guys, because if you know how mad those guys are, they're all on that trend of like, nah, everything's brilliant here. It's like, my God. Them and the LEC are going to get so dark, guys. They're going to become more and more distanced from like the reality you see out. It's going to be like that old Bill Hicks skit, like fear, death, murder. Like they like open the window.
I'm just sitting over here like, how can you be fine when they're literally talking about having cold winter or something?
Also, if you're an
Like,
ESL employee, maybe shut the fuck up about anything moral or what's right. Crazy idea. You sold out. You don't get to have an opinion. You do not get an opinion. I'll give you an opinion if you leave. If you leave, you can have all the opinion. I'll even give you props if you leave. If you don't, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that is
Because here's the thing: if you Carmac, oh yeah, there you go. You've said the fucking name, so I'll summon a bit of the old.
There it is.
Here you go. Right, are you ready? Here's all I have to say to Carmac. I have one thing only to say. You know how offensive it was when I said that your country, jokingly, was shit, one of the worst in Europe. Every poll had an existential hole they were trying to fill. Do you know what I find offensive, Carmac? Dead Yemeni children. What do you think about that in the U.S. Air Force, dickhead? There you go. You like that? That's called splashback. Keep fucking with me, homie. Certain people, you know what? The others, like I said again, same actually with low-level industry people, Semmler. If they're plebs and just low-level intern type, I'm not going to actually even give those people like my attention. But people like Carmac, it's like I always say to Richard. Me and Richard have a very similar philosophy. You know the movie Heat?
Sure.
The classic movie.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you watch that movie, because this will explain a lot about our personalities, you know one of the spoiler, if you haven't seen it, just understand how spoilers work. Like, you know, obviously one of the key plot lines in that is that the Neil McCauley, Robert De Niro character, could have gotten away with it, but he has to settle a petty grievance. He had to make time for Wayne Grow. And one thing me and Richard on this show both agreed is we always make time for Wayne Grow. So understand, Carmac is my Wayne Grow, and I will make time for him anytime I fucking need. With the exception of, like, look, I'm not going to, like, you know, if my child would be born, wait a minute, what the fuck's Carmac doing? I would, yeah, maybe then I'd have to, like, finally grow up. But for now, that's going to be my advice. You know, when you're on, like, a really hardcore diet, so then just having, like, one square of dark chocolate becomes like, I've still got, that's my vice.
That's not bad.
That's what it is. Like, Carmac's my one square of dark chocolate. Probably his political wet dream. And it is salty. Yeah, I like my chocolate salted. I don't really. I just say
There you
salty,
go.
whatever, you know.
It's just fun what you notice. You know, it's like you get accustomed to these little things. So it's not like you're actually, you're just so used to seeing the like just it blending together. But you pattern
I'll ask you
recognition.
something, because here's the thing. I bet you, like the others, when you first went to those ESL events, and Carmac obviously is always coming in and shaking your hands. How are you doing? And trying to have small talk, and he tries to seem like an amiable guy, right? I bet you even used to think back then, like, what's Thorin's vendetta against this guy? Like, he seems cool to me. But here's the thing. You know this, Semmler. I'm not the guy ever who trashes people privately. I don't like try and turn up. Why are you friends with this guy? I'll never comment on that ever. People can be friends with whoever they want. All I'll say is this. In the end, you'll all see, like you're seeing now, the little rat behavior, the fucking rabble rousing, liking the little shitty tweet, like all that pettiness will come out, mate. Don't worry. You'll learn eventually that I just saw this in like 2001. Because understand, it wasn't 2001 a space odyssey. It was 2001 a petty grievances odyssey. And that shit is epic. I'm at the infinity gate already, like, all time, but fuck Carmac still. I'm merging with all human consciousness, but not Carmac still. Like, I'll keep that.
Everybody but Carmac.
No, exactly. My end of Evangelion is Carmac tries to merge with us, and I just shoo him completely.
Push him away, verboten. All right, let's talk about some CS stuff. There was one bit of news actually that we didn't mention last week, and that I thought we could touch on real quick before getting into it, was just how quickly this project with MSL and Sunny and Oscar and Super has fallen apart. Like, we didn't mention it last week. We didn't get to it, but holy shit, did that go fast? Especially, you know, like Swiss company based in Swiss. You're thinking, okay, they got some moolah. They're going to start making some plays. This is interesting. They could be in it for the long run. Surely somebody has calculated out the numbers to make sure that, you know, this all kind of adds up. They're going to get some sponsors. They're going to try to qualify. No, none of that. It lasted like what, a month? Like 2 months? It just completely self-destructed. MSL isn't even in the roster, and now they're talking about selling the remainder of the roster.
That's the problem though, Semmler. What made this whole thing so fucking silly is that obviously people will know, like, not only this project here was one that already was getting going, and obviously there was the two that have gone is the Titans one, which was Gorillas before, and then obviously Apex had a similar thing with their big lineup with Shocks and fucking Jacob and stuff. Both of these projects, as far as I know, have like the lead-in times mental. Like the Gorillas one, they were getting paid for years and years with just a mixed team name saying Gorillas, and they were sort of semi-playing a little bit and then scrimming all the time. And these top players, by the way, turned down chances to go to other teams or join like their old team again or whatever, like, and people were like investing in madly. And so the company, as far as I know, for the Titans one, probably spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars and then just start and then just quit out. Like, that's like some Flashpoint shit. It's like, why even invest the money if you weren't going to go all the way? Or the Cloud9 example with Henry. I never got that either, mate. It's like, look, if you're going to found the project, at least try a few incarnations. Don't just be like, oh, it's what's it not good. Yeah, here's Zeppa, and if that doesn't work, I close the whole thing down. Like that just shows, if people don't know, that's why in esports, the businessmen aren't the businessmen of the future. The guys who've built up the other media properties around the world, they're people, some of them, who do understand long-term thinking and how you build a brand. The esports people, I always said this, Semmler, the reason they were so shady in the past is they were literally redirects from other industries or people who didn't even get into other industries. Now, what we currently have, our kings of esports, they're more like what would be like the middle manager type guy in a huge corporation, like, you know, a regional manager or a guy who runs like content. They're more like that guy. We haven't got like the Mark Cuban type guy yet who comes in and has like the full vision and hires the genius people or the Steve Jobs. We don't have those people yet. And those will come in the future. And that's when, in my opinion, you'll start to see a difference in how franchises are run and whether or not people understand. Like, as you say, like, why would you run for years and years a team paying people salaries and then launch it, fail a few qualifiers and go, just wrap the whole thing up then? Like, what was the point? What were you even hoping for?
Point? Especially when the whole CSGO landscape revolves around the Louvre agreement teams. So, I mean, like, if you're not in that Louvre agreement signing that multi-year deal with ESL, it's going to be very hard to monetize and like actually have a
It's why TSM's making that emphasis that that's the first thing they're going to do, isn't it? Whether they have the lineup or not, because they sort of get it. If we don't have that, what's the point in coming in?
You gotta give a shout out to, what is it, CSGO Elite, the Twitter account that's got that satire bit going on right now, where it's like, you know, Reggie announces that he is willing to suck fucking Gluck his way into the Louvre agreement. Bang on the money, bang on the money. Just a perfect tweet to describe exactly what's going to have to happen for him to get into that agreement. Because if you're not in there, good luck monetizing your.
Oh no,
CSGO
here's the
team.
joke. Are you ready for the joke? The joke is Reggie is just driving around town, crying, begging people to ask for Andrew Tate's number in the hopes he can do a tweet with him and make people think that's why he didn't get the Valorant spot. That's fire, mate.
There you go. Retroactive.
Yeah, exactly. Because mate, they look like clowns. Yeah, they look like really silly that they're not in these leagues. They haven't even done anything. Well,
that really does have you wondering. It's just like, holy, well, I mean, TSM, it is a bit of a car crash over there. But like the fact that they're trying to now pivot and get back into CS:GO, and when the CS:GO landscape is just not the same anymore. Either you're in ESL, and really, I mean, you're in Blast, but it's basically the same teams in Blast as well. So I mean, you know, you may have some opportunities to try and qualify into Blast. There's always going to be the qualifiers, but we've seen how brutal the qualifiers are. Like, it's just total cutthroat madness trying to manage to make it through there. And the coaches themselves, you know, Vendetta's talked a lot about this in the past, where it's almost impossible to get enough points to bump up on the HLTV ranking by playing through these qualifiers in these smaller online leagues. It's like you win one, you do like halfway decent at a pro league, you're just getting all the points. You win like 5 online cups, you're getting just a little bump, you know. So it's just an incredible grind to get anywhere with your roster. So it's like, unless you actually have somebody who's willing to tell you that sort of thing as an investor, you're going in blind. So maybe that is the situation where they just think, oh yeah, you know, we're going to get this talent together. This is going to be sick. You know, these guys, they're clearly good enough, and we're just going to be able to take the world by storm. And then they realized, oh shit, this is how hard it's going to be. And the harsh reality came crashing in.
I mean, I told the story on a past episode, so I won't go through the whole thing again, but that's basically what happened when I consulted with Guild. One of the things I told them, a very serious thing that they should consider, is not investing at all. Because I said, by the way, you're just giving me the money, like telling me how much it would be to make your team. Well, after the team, you're going to buy the spots. Like, if you want a Flashpoint spot, it's $2 million. If you want to get an ES on the other ones, you have to like convince them you're a good partner. You probably, maybe behind the scenes in the Monday, maybe even can buy them. I don't know how it works actually. So yeah, and I told them basically, like, getting a good team's really hard, but that wouldn't even be like the proper step one. Before you can actually really launch this project and know it has any chance of success, you're going to have some of these other things. Otherwise, as you say, it doesn't matter how good the team is. Even a good team now, in my opinion, maybe not like, if you like that Navi, you'd probably be okay. But I'll give you an example. If you had like Ence's current lineup, because obviously Ence is doing this with Blast as well, mate, you might not get through all those qualifiers. And not because you're not like the 8th best team in the world, because those qualifiers are brutal. And as you say, the real genius of what these companies have done is because all they have right now to sell is raw eyeballs. That's all they get is sponsorship money. They are just making it so that, yeah, the top teams can complain and get the schedule tweaked around. So what they do is they have to stack even more pressure onto the guys below. So if you're the guys who want to play the qualifier to get to a close qualifier, to get a spot in a league, which you can get promoted from next next season to go into the ESL conference, and then from that you can get promoted to go into ESL. They want it to be like you have to go through a million hoops. The joke is, every time some fucker in FaZe and Na'Vi doesn't want to play extra games, you just play 10 extra games at the lower level, almost basically for fucking nothing, and you're just the guy who's on the assembly line. You're the person who's just working to like pay the pensions of the EPL teams, as it were. So that's the other reason, by the way, I never fucked with the CSPPA angle of like, we're taking care of the players. You take care of the pro players at the top, you dickhead. You don't even take care of the small NA teams, the tier 2. You don't care about those people. You don't care to represent them. The real joke, if people don't understand, this is a very quick rant, but I'll make this point because it might blow some of your minds. Do you know the reason why, even though Richard has always come from his youth from a perspective of, I'm going to represent players, and players are ones being exploited, I'm going to stop scumbags. I quickly looked around and I became friends with orders, and I became friends with people who ran leagues, and I was like, wait a minute, everyone eats shit in this industry. The shit just rolls downhill. And so what I learned was this. Are you ready? It's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. You know, top pros, them having CSPPA is basically a cartel of top pros. And guess who they're going to fuck in exchange for their money? The guys below them. And if they're lucky, one day in the future, decades later, the guys below them might have a little union and association, and then they'll fuck the amateur pro and the semi-pro guy. And it won't ever be the case that everyone gets fair treatment. Because first of all, by the way, this will be a tangent, but I don't know what fair is. Fair doesn't exist. Isn't fair just what I think people should have? Like, there's no God from heaven coming down comment on esports. We don't know about that. In fact, you would even say, if you look at the way the world works, doesn't even seem like the world necessarily like incentivizes being fair. That actually feels to me like something where that's almost like grace, that you can even choose to be fair to people and actually decide to be compassionate and to give them things. It's why I actually do think, you know what I feel on this, I think it's evil to basically point a gun at someone and say, you must give them a share of yours. That's not a share. That's you just stealing it from me at gunpoint and giving it to someone else. That's redistribution, mate.
It's the whole idea of charity from the equation. And so, yeah. Oh, but
Absolutely.
no, you give so much to taxes. You help so many people. It's like, yeah, with a gun pointed at your head. Stop paying those taxes and see what happens to you.
Mate, some of my taxes, I'm not in the UK anymore, so I guess not directly. I guess in the Netherlands they still do it as well. But you know, the UK was giving a lot of money to certain countries. Oh, I'm like everyone's favourite shit Iron Man clone. I was giving my tax money so it could be shipped overseas to the very people who a few months ago, you might remember, were just telling me like they'll kill me if I ever go to their country. Oh, that's brilliant. You know what? If that was actually my voluntary money, I might ask for that back or stop sending it. Weird how that works. Almost like it's not a great system, is it?
Yeah. It's well, that's a whole other can of worms that we can open there. But that is, I mean, that is how complicated this sort of thing is. But it is yeah, let's rein it in from the tangents on geopolitics and you know, taxes and all that sort of thing, because we could go on that for a while. Let's talk instead about just like the big event, I guess, that just wrapped up this week. I mean, there's a lot to talk about on the RMR. There's a few other topics, but I felt like we should spend a bit of time at least on some Counter-Strike, like Counter-Strike results from one of the bigger events that just actually went down. And I thought I don't have it like particularly laid out in the notes, but I figured we'd just go through like RMR Group A, RMR Group B, and the Americas.
Let's do it,
and just go through that. Because there's a lot there. There's so much there. But dude, I really appreciate your point of view on this one, and I think you're fucking nailing it already right out the gate. The FaZe point of view, just the fact that everybody was going on and ragdogging them and saying like, oh, you know, they're not, you know, are they still number one? Are they still that good? Are they gonna make it? Oh, they only qualified in overtime. It's like, yeah. But this comes back. This was the point that you actually made. I'm going to tie it back to another video that you did recently, where it was the Chael Sonnen point, where it's just like, these are the championship rounds, and you have to beat the champion. You know, otherwise you're not the champion. You know, that's the quality of the champion, is that you have to fucking beat them. Well, I feel like FaZe put that on display for everybody already, right? In Group A, you know, it's just like, you have to beat them, and unless you beat them, they're not going away. And they get it done over and over again. They 3-0 their group. All three of the teams that they play against qualify as well. So it's not like they got any freebies. It's not like they got any of the easier teams that, you know, were just like washed, you know, just, okay, get them out of the way, easy win, whatever. No, overtimes, and they actually get it done. So, like, what are you thinking about FaZe right now, man? Like, bang on the money. You were on fire on Twitter.
Yeah, that's the point, basically. I mean, as you say, the premise in sports like UFC, because think about it, in UFC, it has that component where you can just get knocked out at any moment. The guy could just submit you at any moment like that. It means that essentially to be like a really decorated, like long-term streak champion is insanely hard. Because what it means, guys, is if you ever turn up and you're not having a good day, You have to win on that day too. You don't have a choice. There's no lower bracket in the UFC. Like if you lose, you lose. Like you're out. You might even be out of the title fight picture back in the day if you weren't a champion. So like in that scenario, if you're someone like John Jones, GSP, the reason why they are gods of the sport is because they beat some of the best people in the world on their own bad day and still found a way to win. So to me, FaZe is a team that epitomizes that, mate. Yeah, certainly their level goes down when they play against lesser opponents, but they get it done. Like the only time they failed recently was Pro League, and that was a studio land with like 7 people in the crowd on it. So like, as I say, that's not even the traditional area they're the best in. So until I see them in a stadium like the Major lose, I'm not going to give up. Like, why would I? Because as I said on Twitter, this is what kills me about people with their takes. You might not like my takes, or you might think my takes are too extreme or they're edgy, but what they always are is consistent. You can understand from my takes, if you watch my videos, what I think, what my principles are, how I arrived at them. Here's what other people don't do. One of the tricks I learned in content was, because you want to explore a whole topic, you don't just stop with the good point. You expand out. You go, right, what would the second point be and the third point be, and how that fits to something else I hadn't thought of. So what fans and even analysts never do is they tell me all the time, Semmler, FaZe's not looking as good as before. I agree, but they never complete the thought, because here's the completed thought. FaZe not looking as good, they're implying, means they're not number one, means they're not the favourite for the Major. Then tell me who is. And you notice, nobody in the world will do that. And here's why. Because Na'Vi looked ropey as fuck at EPL. Because obviously, we all know that like G2 didn't even fucking succeed. Vitality, they barely won Pro League. Team Liquid, they took everything to almost win Pro League. You keep going, Cloud9, they can just fail on their asses any moment. So here's what you're really saying to me. The whole top 5, top 6 has problems, but I'm just going to key in on FaZe because that's the edgy take, isn't it? Like, FaZe isn't as good. Like, tell me something I don't know, motherfucker. The question is, would you still bet on them to win the Major? If so, shut the fuck up. If you wouldn't, now I'm interested. Now you have my attention. I would love to get an analyst tell me who's going to win the Major, who isn't FaZe. Because listen, I think they've played a little bit dodgier recently, but I would never bet on anyone else right now. In fact, there's even going to be a thing I'll talk about in the video. Esports Bet is doing like outright odds on who can win the Major. Spoiler, I will be taking FaZe Clan. Like, of course I will. Like, who else would you bet on at this point in time? So if you don't, by the way, there's an example. If you're one of those fans of Imperial, they have 50-1 odds. Go on then, big boy. Pop a cheeky little bet on. Could even be €100. Couldn't you get 50 times that amount? Which, let's be real. Well, the joke is that real is their currency in it, so whatever.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the other thing you said as well, here's also how people never look at context, Semmler. Because you have to remember, because FaZe 3-0'd the Swiss system, that meant that aside from NIP, who also 3-0'd, nobody else had qualified except them and Cloud9, right? So here's NIP, sorry. So here's the interesting detail, Semmler. FaZe played against Gamer Legion, Fnatic, and Sprout, right? Right after FaZe Clan qualified, Sprout qualified. Oh, this is getting interesting. Maybe Sprout's not as bad as we thought, guys. Okay, then in the 3-2 matches, Gamer Legion and Fnatic qualify, including Gamer Legion beating G2. Now, which is it? Is G2 whack for losing to Gamer Legion, or did FaZe barely beat a team that no one did good? It can't be one. It has to be like a scenario where both make sense. It has to be coherent. So I'd even agree. The names don't look crazy on paper, but they got better and better and better as the RMR went on. And at the end of the day, as I've said before about FaZe Clan, if they have to start nitpicking when you win because you didn't win by enough, that's the sign you are just the greats. Like, put it this way, it's why I actually have learned to not take it so hard when people criticize my work. Because the joke is, I'm literally like a self-made man who has excelled in like 5 fields simultaneously. So if they want to hate on me, they have to try and nitpick something. Like, they can't even, that's why they can't actually even say I'm like broken or failing. They have to say I'm like irrelevant, which implies like I was relevant, but now I've become, you know, they have to twist some angle on it. They can't just come out and just go, you don't even have any money. It's like, you know I do. Come on home. You think it through. You know the numbers. You see those metrics. They used to tell me back in the day I was shit at Twitter. I posted that screenshot the other day. In May, I had something like 43 million impressions. Suddenly, I only have 200k followers. 43 million. The joke is, like, I wake up and do that. And like half of Brazil just appears in front of me like, yes, master, what do you wish now? I will do your bidding.
Caralho.
Exactly.
They never disappoint. It is worth mentioning. Okay, I mean, there's a lot there, but like already Gamer Legion, freaking sick to see that. So Acor already, like, so FaZe managed to beat Gamer Legion. What needs to be mentioned is that Acor played out of his mind. Maybe he had a career series against FaZe, a career map against FaZe there. He was just hitting everything. He's a total freak. And you saw that pretty much throughout this tournament where Acor is revitalized. He's come alive in a way that we haven't seen in ages. It's what put him on the map. This kind of play put him on the map to begin with.
Yes.
Where it got him a chance to start playing in some more of the tier 1 teams and actually start, doing some work. All of a sudden, he's popping off against the best in the world, and just, man, he looked good. And then also, it's worth mentioning, just because Mouse Sports are in the mix right now in terms of their own results, that's mainly the Mouse Academy team. Well, the one guy who didn't get the bump pretty much from that Academy team was Shuhei, because he was the IGL for the Academy team, but they already had Dexter on the main roster. So it always felt a bit sad to see that, Shuhei wasn't going to get that step up, to the main roster along with the rest of his team, and that he was going to get kind of hung out to dry. So for him to just, hit the ground running in the RMR, show up on a new team, he's got Acor who's doing amazing work, and it feels like he's actually calling a good game as well as hitting some shots and getting some clutch moments himself. Like, it was just a really pleasant match to kick off the RMR with, where I was like, fucking hey, this is awesome. FaZe are going to get the win, but it was definitely not a given. That was a really sick performance from them. And then obviously, of course, they lose to FaZe, they lose to Spirit. No shame in that. Spirit are always a threat. But then they go on to beat G2. That right there. I mean, do we want to talk about that one? I mean, I was like, you kind of like want to hold G2 back a little bit, but we might as well. I mean, Gamer Legion taking G2 out of the mix and G2 not making the cut. Amazing. Like, they win against Ecstatic and then proceed to lose. I mean, to be fair, G2 then proceed to lose in a best of 1 versus Cloud9. And then one win, where one win just played mega aggressive and just got in their face, never let G2 hit the ground running. And G2 were playing super passive, so it was a really weird match to watch. But G2 just never really felt like they were getting in that map. And then they lose 2-1 to Gamer Legion. So G2, what do you make of this situation, dude? It's there's so much to talk about that there.
I mean, on this channel, by the way, today we already released the Snake and Banter where I actually addressed this in like more detail. So I'll just reference that. But basically, my take is this. Look, overall, yes, of course, G2 failed. Like, these are all opponents they should be beat on paper. Cloud9 one's a bit more debatable. They're around the same level. But that's even an element. There's two angles here. One, two of their losses are in BO1s. Like, that can happen to a lot of teams, as you saw in the rest of the RMR. Secondly, because the seeding for these fucking RMRs is just stupid and non-existent. Like, if you seeded a real tournament the way ESL does, Blast does, it's impossible that in the 1-0 match, Cloud9 and G2 would be playing each other. Instead of, like, I think Sprout played like Spirit or something mental like that. Like, so that already means that teams like Sprout potentially had an easier route than G2. Like, that's kind of wild to me. So already the format certainly didn't make it easier for G2. With that said, though, as I say, best of 3 against Gamer Legion, you are supposed to beat them. You are the better team, the more qualified team, blah, blah, blah. I do think in this tournament, I don't know if it was pressure, but Nico definitely didn't perform like I expected him to. Monty was still pretty good. I mean, I would say there were probably nerves all around. Like, as you say, in that particular Gamer Legion match where they knew, like, we're out if we lose, they did look in that match like they played not to lose, if you know what I mean. And anyone who knows how that works, that almost never works. Playing not to lose actually just means that if the other person is like either, this is why Imperial qualified in my opinion, if the other person's like a veteran who knows how to use pressure, or it's just a young up-and-comer who doesn't know any better, and just goes, fuck it, I'm going to try and knock out Mike Tyson. It might happen. That can happen to you. Yeah, so if I were G2, one thing I would say is that you should have just played and gone out on your shield, mate. If you were Nico and you dropped mad numbers, you were super good, and you lost, you'd go, okay, I gave my best shot, I tipped my hat to you, you beat me, I'll come back next time. But I think even the way they lost was a little bit like, they did play a bit scared. They did sort of play like, oh, bloody hell, our jobs are on the line. You can't be thinking that way if you want to be the best team in the world.
Do you think that the Giga Chad Hooksy meme got a bit too in there? Just because all of this focus on Hooksy, all of this focus on the Giga Chad mean, like, are you taking us seriously? Are you just memeing on us? Are you just joking about it? Like, what's...
I mean, the joke is, if you remember, he did actually like frag out in the game against Ecstatic, like the first one. He did actually like top frag.
He did actually do well, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is this. I actually get the sense, I know Hooksy a little bit. Obviously, I've had him on my show, so I have access to DM him, etc. All I'll say is this. I actually don't think he is taking this super to heart and getting really depressed. But like, I actually think, Semmler, that he does get that, like, Look, it happened. And also, crucially, I think the reason he embraced the Giga Chad thing, first of all, it's totally in line with G2's branding. That's a great way to stay in G2, mate, if you seem like you get the brand. Nexa, like, was funny, but he wasn't going to, like, play into memes as heavily. And then the other thing for me is this. I also get the sense that if you are Hooksy, it's actually genius marketing. Because what you've done is, when someone makes a meme, so the meme is you're shit at the game, the meme is like, yeah, but I'm a fucking Chad. Look, I'm the leader anyway. I just make Monacy frag out, don't I? Big dick in it all around the map. I don't even need to frag to win. Like, that is what you're supposed to do. Like, it's why I've always said, the Henry G tragedy in Cloud9, where he did try to make those memes like the Colossus and talk about that and brag that he'd win the tournaments, that only failed and blew up in his face because that team was like absurdly bad at winning games. They were even in loads of games. They just could never get over the finish line. So I always said, mate, if they'd even won, I'm not talking much, 20% more of their games. They won very few if people don't know. That already would have started playing in their favour. People would have been super compelled to watch them. They would have been like box office, like, are they going to qualify? Aren't they? Will they beat Navi this time? Won't they? That would have made them like a team that would have had way more eyeballs than they should have done. And the reason why I thought it was great marketing is that people don't know, there's actually a few moron owners in Flashpoint and a lot of fans, Semmler, who think that my failure in Flashpoint, remember, my job was creative director. I didn't run the fucking tournaments. I didn't decide who plays in the league. I didn't even do the business of what teams joined the league. I just ran the creative aspects and had final say on things like talent joining and how we do skits and stuff, right? They think a failure of mine, Semmler, was the PR approach I took with Flashpoint. You guys are so stupid, it's impossible. Let me tell you a detail right now. There was a competition that Heroic won and beat Astralis in the final of on LAN this year. Did anyone know that? Most of you don't. It was called the Pinnacle Championship, and it was a LAN that took place in Sweden. I'm going to say, like, what, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago?
Something like that, yeah. 2 months ago.
It was like just before the player break, I think. And basically, even though Heroic's a massive team, Astralis Big was there or whatever, the reason you don't know about it, even though first place was $150,000. By the way, you only got 175 for winning Pro League. The reason you don't know about that is, wasn't very well branded and marketed. There was no special angle to watch it. Meanwhile, in Flashpoint, we had like one team in the top 14. It was Heroic, if you remember. And then obviously they even left the tournament after the group stage in number 1. So we had none of the top 10 teams in the world. But why were people interested in Flashpoint? Why were people almost obsessed with news about Flashpoint? To hate on me, to try and battle back at what I'm saying, and to get in on the drama of, oh, this is what ESL recently, but look what's going on with it. That was literally the best marketing for fuck all money you will ever get. The bang for your buck was insane on that. So if people don't get it, like that's how you handle marketing. So as long as Hooksy really can avoid reading the replies and just sort of ride the wave, like there's going to be downs and there's going to be ups, as long as he can manage both, I actually think this can end up working out for him. I know this is like a massive failure, but luckily for him, the Alexi thing had its own failure, so I think he's going to get a little bit more time. But yeah, I don't think it's as bad as people think. Like certainly the performance was bad, but some BO1s as well. It's not the end of the world to me.
The other side of it is the G2 are themselves. I mean, I like how we're talking about we're already planning for failure, sort of in this sort of scenario. But I mean, G2 have to sort their own house out before they can start sorting the teams out. So I mean, he's even going to have a bit of wiggle room there, I think, because I mean, you know, who was calling the shots before on G2? It's Carlos who's taking a look at everything, and it's Carlos who's deciding how to make plays and everything. And you know, it's going to take time for G2 to figure out how all of that works without the guy who founded the team. And
I'll tell you how I think the team runs. It doesn't really. This is just a comedic sketch. Blah blah blah. All likenesses, you know, are exactly this person. I say that legally. I'll receive a court law. No, obviously it's just all jokes in it. It's all Minecraft in a video game and all that jazz, right? Yeah, well, I imagine how the team runs is like this. Carlos comes in like, all right, mate, how are you doing there, Nico? Wasn't a big fan of the results recently. What's going on with Blast? Like, why weren't we in the finals there? Why was Vitality there? Also, like, Katowice, we made it to the final, but no follow-up. And the major, what was that? Like, we didn't even get to the playoffs. Like, something wrong. And he's like, well, I guess, but you know, I guess it's all right though. And he goes, you feeling a bit down there? Something wrong? Anything I can do? Well, nothing you haven't already done. But yeah, I guess no. And he goes, tell you what can I get you? What could bring you out of this funk? Like, should I get you a little IGL? Get you a player? I mean, I wouldn't want to tell you what to do. It's your team. You do it. All I am do is play. With fucking shit. It's like Alexi. Sorry, what was that? No, just saying some people in the team, not me. I don't have any decision-making power. I would never influence the team. Some people don't think Alexi B should be around. That's weird, because I was talking to Hunter. He seemed totally fine. Yeah, well, some other people then, whatever. Maybe Hunter just wasn't in the mood that day. But all I'm saying is some other people think LXCB's calling style. He was trying to micromanage me. I mean, Nico, they even said to me, Nico, bizarre. They said he was going to try and manage Nico too. And basically the joke is at the end he goes, all right, well, just tell me what you want. Look, I don't want to tell you what I want, do I? I just want you to run the team the way you... The joke is, Nico is your fucking, like, the fucking girlfriend in this scenario where it's like, they won't tell you exactly what's upset them, because if they had to tell you what's upset them, then you're not the right guy for them. You need to guess what's upset them, correctly do the thing that they would want, which they might not even know what it is. Do it for them. In doing so, you will show that you care, that you listen to them, that you care about their lives. And at the end of all that, if it then works out, they will just be like, that was what I wanted all along. What the fuck is it? So basically, I get the vibe that, like, yeah, that maybe was outrun before. Whereas now, there's the thing as well. This might be the worst time ever for Nico to have his career. Because if that guy really is gone, if Carlos ain't there in the room, and he isn't the guy powwowing with you, and he isn't the one getting your players and trying to figure out what you want, mate, just look at Evil Geniuses now. That was a legendary brand, but it's being run, I'll tell you, there's content coming soon, by clowns. It's being run by people who don't know Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
It's being run in a way where if you're G2, you might wake up one day and you're Nico and you go, oh, just go to the group chat, Slack group, whatever they're in, see what's going on with the team. What the... They've recruited MSL, but I hate MSL. Like, it's too late now, isn't it? Like, that's how companies run, mate. You are just an employee for real then, not just when you're having a fucking pout. So I actually do get sort of the sense that, like, however it ran before, whether you liked it or didn't, I've told you on the last episode, there's a reason I predict them to be a team that will win the major in the future. If they keep this core together, can do great things. If Carlos ain't there, though, it's a different world. Like, yeah, if we start being like a sports franchise, you can just slide downhill and it just keeps going.
If you don't have the guy who has the vision, who had the vision to drive it all, for it, the vision, the gumption, the desire, all of that thing to come together, who can just snap his finger and make something happen. Yes, there's other investors. Yes, there's other people, and but really, the guy with the vision to push the thing forward. It's not like those people just drop out of the sky or something. It's not, there's a reason why they're special. There's a reason why G2 is as successful as it was. There is a reason why he was able to do multiple things in the industry across time. And there are very few people who are like that in esports, but those guys, they hang around, they're around. But you get rid of those guys, it's just like good fucking luck. It's going to take a committee, and you better hope that that committee is going to be able to do the job and actually work together and get along, because otherwise you guys are going to be shit out of luck. And ever since the G2 news broke, that was essentially my take on it, is that they're just another team now. And I would be willing to bet that they do slide into oblivion, because it takes a special kind of feel, like you really do have to sense, the jokes, a sense of humor. You have to be able to know like what's right, what's not. You got to push that line the way Carlos liked to push that line, to find out where the edge is and all that sort of stuff. And dude, I don't see corporate suits being able to do that kind of thing. So unless the G2 brand completely goes a different direction now, I do see them kind of just falling apart completely as a brand themselves. And then it could very well be the same thing on the CS side of things, because who's actually going to be calling the shots for that team now? Who do you turn to, as you say, when you need to get a change made, or when you need to actually find something to get some resources to go your way? I mean, it's going to be really weird. What I'm curious about is, I was curious about like Extasa's take on this, actually, and I haven't seen any interviews or anything like that, any kind of content coming out from him.
He made a tweet after they failed to qualify that was something along the lines like, like the standard, like, but it was like or whatever, like, I know.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious if there will ever be a follow-up with him from a journalist or something like that.
There will be one on the fucking Nell site, the 1PV.
Yeah, exactly, like 1PV or something like that.
The good news is there'll be one in like after the major or whatever, there'll just be a fucking interview where like I said, like I told you, you would think the joke is that like Nell and 1PV are just like, I can't actually remember the name of the bit. What's the one that the James O'Keefe guy does? What's his platform called?
Project Veritas.
Yeah, there we go. You would think it was one of those interviews too, because like the joke is like they'll be just staying in this interview in a month and a half. Like, yeah, the thing is that Nico twat is a little bit tough to deal with, but like, this is in French, so it's not going out anywhere. Like, not just to the French people. Good, like, okay. So yeah, the thing is, and also Carlos, like, he just wasn't giving me the players I want, and I thought LXCB could go fuck himself. But anyway, yeah, thanks for the interview. Yeah, nice. And then the joke is, cause actually it doesn't always get translated, and it's questionable as to whether it gets on Reddit. That might not even get out there. So I'll be waiting, because I actually do really enjoy those interviews. They are good.
That's the thing.
I have a question actually. Is there something I'm missing about French culture? Like why somehow is that not considered illegal? Like, why do the orgs let it happen in French scene? Is there something special about France particularly that they just think no one who no, because I've noticed basically it does seem like internally in like scenes that are national. So it's like Spanish are like this in League of Legends.
Don't expect anything to get out.
They also have the same thing. Yeah. They also like everyone sort of knows the gossip anyway. And so it is talked about on talk shows in a way that like internationally it isn't. Like some of that stuff never gets out there. So is there a reason why you think in the French scene it's like that?
No, it may very well be just that they're just so used to it not getting out of the French scene. So they exist in their little bubble and they're not used to it actually having to worry about it getting out and getting onto the bigger stage of like the Reddit or whatever, or the HLTV or whatever, like getting into the English speaking sphere. They may be, a lot more. Also, I think a lot of those guys just, are so tight knit. They come up together across a span of years. It's been the same guys running the French scene forever, as far as I know. So it's just they go way back. And so if they're having discussions like that, then it's probably just the fact that they've known each other forever, and it's just that simple. Not so much like I can't think of like a cultural aspect to it so much. I mean, it would be French arrogance for them to think that, like, what do you mean? Like our scene is the only scene that matters, like that would be a very French way to look at things, where it's just like, well, we don't really care what the Americans have to say or the English speakers have to say because they don't speak French. So already they're,
the joke is they probably imagine like it doesn't matter if they translate it into their fucking mongrel languages, like they'll never capture the opulence of the French tongue. Like, give me a fucking break, I know.
That is it. We hope for their sake that they'll be able to understand
exactly.
The subtleties. Oh man.
Because I've always thought that, by the way, again, without veering too far away, obviously America and generally the Anglosphere is vilified for all the colonial approaches of like homey. Shall I introduce you to a place called France and the French Empire? Like, I don't think you guys know that's going on to this day. Go and see how all those African countries feel about France. They have the similar feeling to me, and my feeling was only based on going to ESWC.
Those chickens are coming home to roost now.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
France, they're going to have their own issues. Speaking of a team that may have issues down the line, NIP. Now, so hear me out, because there was a lot of hype. Like, oh man, Legend Stage, they made it through 3-0. This is fantastic. Alexi B, God IGL. This, that, and other. But then if you look at the teams that they actually played against, you're like, okay, hold on. Maybe we need to pump the brakes here a little bit, because they played against a gimped Astralis, which, to be fair, they're not going to be feeling as confident as they normally would. They're not playing with their full roster. They're lacking firepower. The laundry list of reasons. So already you're going up against Astralis. Then you're going up against BNE. Not the strongest team in the group either. They did qualify, to be fair, but still not a top contending team here, especially in a best of one scenario where maybe there's still some nerves for BNE, and BNE did have to fight. They did have to go the distance, so it wasn't the cleanest RMR for them. So they definitely showed that they were shaky. So again, great second round match for NIP. And then they go up against Cloud9, which again, Cloud9, pressure is on in that sort of thing. And also Cloud9, really a team that heavily relies on certain players stepping up individually to get the team across the finish line. And so if those players miss out, well, then all of a sudden you're looking at a situation where you can take Cloud9 out in a best of 3. So everybody's, shouting from the rooftops like, oh, Alexi B, it's a success already. It's just like, well, how strong? I'm willing to downgrade them going into the RMR. Granted, they'll have a couple weeks to work here before the RMR actually kicks off. Maybe like a week of boot camp and then you gotta travel.
The major. You keep saying RMR. The RMR's done. It's
oh, sure, yeah. It's all just one fucking event now. I know. What I mean? But like the continuation of this first phase of the major, they have like a couple, like 10 days or so, right, before they're gonna have to be there and start getting ready. So it's not a whole lot of time. So I'm actually willing to kind of downgrade my expectations for NIP going into this and just being like, okay, I think they could be like a middling team with some power spikes here and there. Like, what's your take on the NIP roster? Do you think that this is working here with Alexi B?
Like, where I would agree with you is this. They've only played 3 matches. Like, that's just an incredibly tiny sample size. And some of those matches, like, as you say, like, BO1s against Astralis and BNA, who gives a fuck? Don't really care. Like, they're not good teams. Because Astralis, by the way, at this tournament was nothing. Without Config, you saw they don't even have a teammate. They were garbage. They looked they could have even lost harder against like fucking Force. Like, Force was kicking the shit out of them all the time. Like, the Shalfie guy was better than everyone in the server. So no, I think if you look at who they beat, the Cloud9 one's legit. Here's why. Because again, if people want to now go, well, I never thought G2 was that good anyway. Well, Cloud9, they're not even that good anyway. Well, then who's left? Na'Vi wasn't good. FaZe went out at fucking the Pro League. Team Liquid didn't win, and Vitality did win, but everyone tells me they aren't good. So, like, there has to be someone, first of all, just by definition of what the word good means. It's a relative term, isn't it? You have to be good reference to other people. And also, in this particular case, like, logically, Cloud9, if you look at their past results, they're probably still, like, what, 5th best team in the world or something? Yeah. Like, if you're an IP, that's pretty decent first outing, first best of 3 to play. I agree, you haven't smashed anyone massive. You didn't play FaZe or Na'Vi or something like that. That's okay. So what I'll do is this. I think on paper, the roster has a lot of potential. I'm not that sure about the whole res angle, and I don't give a flying fuck about people repeating that. Like, but the coach said that actually res is really good and he can be a simple type AWPer. Yeah, and I say my balls are massive. Let's see if they can fit in your mouth. What the fuck are you talking about? You can make up anything and say it. Like, should we actually tell you what? Tell him to lay me fucking odds, and I'll go ahead and bet the other side of that one. I'll take the fucking under on that. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be a world class AWPer, but I will say this, he does seem he's an all right AWPer. So when you consider if he's going to be an all right AWPer, then you've got Hampus and Broline. And by the way, all those angles we speculated about Hampus, they're looking great. He does look like, just like Blame F, you unleash him from being IGL. He keeps all the upside of a rifler and gives you none of the downside of being the IGL. And I've always just thought Alexi B is just a really quality IGL when his stars listen to him. In NIP, they want to listen to him. They've just been going years.
They're conditioned to do that.
Even Hampus would tell you he's not a real IGL. That's why they kept using like ZTR as a supply, as like a secondary IGL and stuff. Like, they were always willing to do it. So this is the right project for Alexi B. And the last thing I'll say is this. Just like the Vitalities and G2s of the world, because you've gone international, now it becomes easy if we have to bring in one more player, if we have to make a player change, because now we don't have to get Swedish people anymore. We can get anyone. We could be the ones who in the future are getting like a Dexter or an Elian as our AWPer. That can be on the table for us. We could be the ones who sign like the next big up and coming player, no matter where he's from. We don't have to wait for them to be from Sweden or able to speak Swedish. So I think people are overlooking that aspect. I think if NIP, look, they're obviously a bit of a shitter org and no one knows what they're going to do. Like maybe they take the money from the device deal and just pocket it. Wouldn't put it past them. But assuming they actually want to make small investments to keep the team getting better, I think there's a track where they can go and be good here. I agree. For the major, they're not going to be like a top team, but they've got like a chance to make playoffs. They could do that. That would be, I would consider a good goal to aim for. And I just have a lot of faith in Lexi B in general. Like the one downside I have about that guy, and this is why I don't think it worked in G2, and I'll probably do a piece of content about this, is he does want to be the leader, who is the mastermind, who does that. But this is the downside. I don't think he always has the personality to do that, though. That's why those stories when he was an OG were like, right, it's only once the game's about to be lost that he's like, shut the fuck up, I need to call now. And then he would call some straight fire, like 5 rounds in a row, where he just like fucking soul read the other IGL, right? You can't be waiting until the game's almost over to do that. If you want to have that perspective, you know this interview I recently did with Jacob, and I asked, what was it like when Carrigan joined the team, and how was he able, like he did when he joined FaZe, to like instantly get you to be a good team? How does he get you up to speed instantly? And what he said was that when Carrigan joined, one of the first things he said to everyone is, just don't ever question my calls. As in, after the game, we could talk about it, or we could revisit the demo, or the coach could tell us something. But if I say call now, you just fucking do it, mate. You don't go, well, I think we should. Say, who the fuck are you? I'm here to make the calls. So if Alexi B ever nails that, by the way, he doesn't need to now, because he's with a bunch of conflict-averse Swedes. But if he ever actually wants to deal with, in my opinion, the superstars, the Nikos, the Semmler, you got to have that gear. Because those guys also, by the way, only respect you if you sort of come at them a bit like that, and are willing to put yourself on the line, and as a result, even be wrong maybe, and tell them, I think you're wrong now, but then take the consequences. So as long as, for this team, I think it's fine. But in the future, I think he still has that gear to go, and that's what will make him a great IGL. Because I'll put my money on him. I did a year or two ago as well. I think when all is said and done, Alexi B will be considered one of the great IGLs in CSGO.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's just, he feels like he needs some time to work. That's going to be the main thing here. And now it's almost like this vibe of going, you're pairing him with threat. You're pairing him with these guys who are kind of built around having systems and around having like really intense, detailed kind of approaches to the game. And so it feels like if Alexi B is that kind of hands-on IGL who really wants to get into the nitty-gritty and really wants to figure it out, it feels like this would be a perfect environment for him. I mean, Threat is even, it seems like they even have some room to move. Alexi B doesn't apparently have an analyst or anybody that he's taking with him, a la Kerrigan with Inner Shine, right? Where he's got a...
But he has the DGL guy.
Pardon me?
He has DGL, the coach.
Sure. No, but what I mean is, like, I'm just thinking from like the Kerrigan perspective. It was always interesting to me that Kerrigan had his analyst. You know,
Oh, you
and
mean
it's like,
took him from the old org, right? I
took
see
him
what
from
you
the
mean.
old org, and it's like, you're coming with me now. Because, you know, it's like, we work well together, so you're coming with me over here to FaZe. And, like, that's not the case with Alexi B, but it is cool to see the threat is out there actually tweeting and actually, you know, kind of putting the feelers out there trying to find an analyst for him. So it looks like Nip have unlocked some resources to try and give him even more tools to work with here to get things up to speed as fast as possible going into the
Obviously,
major,
you have
which
to
is very
be
cool to see.
able, you have to be eligible to be paid via PayPal. But aside from that, it's all squared away. So you don't remember that? When Fiflaren left,
The
they said there
PayPal
was
scam.
nothing
Yeah,
in the
okay, okay,
PayPal.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
they were
NIG.
scamming them. No, you were thinking I was being
No.
the Anders one, where Anders possibly, you know, facilitated a crime. But that's just something that we
No,
don't
I
talk
wasn't
about.
thinking about that one either. Although I do wonder. No, I was thinking about the. No, I was thinking about the recent thing where PayPal were just like, if you are guilty of wrongthink, we will deduct $2,500 from your account. It's like,
By the
oh,
way,
okay.
that wasn't even
Sure.
what it was reported as. Like, in theory, they can do that, but people making it sound like they actually said that. Like, if you ever read, that's one of those ones where no one clicks the links and reads the original thing. If you go read the original thing, it's not quite like that. And spoiler, this is really going to blow a lot of your minds. Loads of things online work that way and already have those capacities built in. Like, for example, if you don't know, tomorrow Amazon can wake up and just wipe your Kindle clean and you own nothing.
That's the reason
They
why I
can do
stopped
it.
buying them.
That's real. People think I'm joking. That's real. So in the modern
Yeah.
world, a lot of the services are set up that way. It's just the problem is, this is one thing I had to realize.
You
It's
will
why I
own
don't.
nothing and be happy.
That's why I don't complain as much now, Semmler. If you actually knew there never was a mythical period in time, in some charted history at least, where there ever was freedom of speech, then you don't complain as much. Like, it's actually sort of like a utopian idea. Like, certainly things have gotten worse, but a lot, like, you know, one of the main things in the modern day, this applies to esports a bit because, to be fair, people who get blocked thinks this is the case. You know, if you ever block someone on a forum or on Twitch, they go, freedom of speech. It's like, that never applied to, like, what you do in your like, if you invite people to a dinner party, they don't have freedom of speech to just keep saying anything they want. You can tell them to leave. That's actually how it worked in a lot of these scenarios. What people don't understand is when we were all little kids, that's how people explained it to us. Like, well, everyone gets to have a say because that's freedom of speech. That's like just a nice idea. That's just a pleasant thought that if you lived in some like luxury conditions, you might choose to do for someone to be nice and be a cool guy. But it's not something that I was ever as hard enforced in the world as people think. And obviously, you don't even have to go back many hundreds of years, and there's just none of that. You're just like, you're some fucking guy, a serf. You're someone who's part of an empire. Like, there was never that thing. Things were a lot more cynical and ruthless back then. So on that sort of angle, yeah, I don't worry as much about that, mate.
No. All right. Well, I mean, to be fair, that is the future that it feels like.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
is.
just
We're
like
going that
that's
route.
my gripe is just that everything has to be tied to an account now. Like what you can't actually own a physical copy of anything anymore in terms of like your games or, you know, like you say, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to get these books. You know, you put it on a Kindle account. What happens if you lose the Kindle account? Okay, cool. All those books. Yeah. That's why I've just gone back to buying hardcover now. You know, it's just like, nope, if it's worth having, I'll have it on my shelf and, you know, there we go. But yeah, that aside, I mean, the nip situation, man, it's just, I'm not going to get on board with like the whole thing because I did get fully on board the nip train when Device joined. And I was like, this is it. They've got everything they need. And well, we all saw what happened there. So it is kind of like I'm still on the fence a little bit where it's just like, now you have to show me before I actually jump on board. And so, you know, they've showed us this much at least that they were able to qualify in the top 3 spot from the RMR. And then, you know, we'll see how they actually fare once they get into the continuation of the main event, because it's pretty much all just the main event now. All right. Was there any other team that in particular that you wanted to talk about coming out of this A group, or do we want to move on to the B group?
Let me just double check.
Because, well, I mean, you got Sprout, but I mean, Sprout.
Oh, I'll tell you what the interesting one to me was. Like, I'm not that big in on Sprout. Like, I will say the Stair guy's the one that might be going to Astralis was linked. Like, does look like, if you watch just eye test wise, he's like an 18-year-old kid who does look like he's going to be like one of the next like good players who could be like really skilled and super duper good and all that jazz. That's not bad. For me, the most interesting one was actually Fnatic, because again, they showed at Pro League a little bit of flair. They were able to win against Navi and Nip and stuff. So they're a team where, like, you look at that team. Remember, Mezzi's transitioned to IGL. He used to be with Alex as a partnership. So I actually think you look at that team, they've done enough games now where I'm starting to think they are looking pretty legit, actually. Look, they don't have like the raw player potential to be like a relevant team to win a tournament. They can't probably even make a semi-final, but like this is a team where when they go to the major, I'll predict it right now, they'll cause an upset or two of some of the big dogs. They might beat a Team Liquid in a BO1. They might get a best of 3 against maybe like an NIP type team. That's not impossible. Like, I think that's the thing for me. That team actually, like I told you, it's an underrated set of players. It's not big names, but whoever's done the scouting seems to have done a good job. They seem to have like a coherent idea of what they were aiming for. And so fair play to them. Like, that's a team I sort of see as a sleeper on the rise.
Yeah, they can actually be. I mean, they did beat kind of the must beat, the must win game of Aurora Gaming. It's like everybody has to win against Aurora Gaming. You don't really get the option not to. Same goes for Ecstatic. But like they then lose against FaZe. The one that kind of threw a wrench in things was the loss against Bait. That was where it's like that's not supposed to happen if you're going to be a contender. But then they fight back. You know, Eternal Fire in 1 win. Don't drop a map in 2 best of 3s. It's like, okay.
By the way, there's a detail to say. Another thing I thought was whack, because you know one thing that's interesting, I'll just make this point, because anyone who followed the Competitive Edge show that's on this channel where I did all the bets for Pro League and all the different rounds, right? One of the things that was amazing, Semmler, is in 3 out of the 4 groups, this is not an exaggeration, not only did I get upset wins correct, but I also got scenarios where the big favourite would like lose a map or lose a big game. And the reason I was able to do that is I've actually thought about the way that like those round robin best of 3 group stages play out. And there's a certain sort of like a pattern to it of like when certain teams activate and then when you have your best chance to get an upset, and then the game that might mean nothing at the end, that means you can just lose because you don't have to win that game. You're already first in the group. So along similar lines, I do think in the modern day, because we've so rarely used Swiss systems, except at tier 2, interestingly enough, like the Snow Sweet Snow type cups, because tier 1 teams only ever play a Swiss system at the major, I think teams and IGLs and coaches don't know how to best navigate Swiss systems. So here's one of the reasons why. When you say to me, Fnatic lost to Bait, and I go and look and they played Ancient, you're playing Ancient as your BO1 map. You're out of your motherfucking mind. Like, even the best teams on Ancient can't always pick that in a best of 3 and know they'll win. It's actually a map that's proven almost impossible to like nail and figure out. Unless you're the absolute best, you tend actually to sort of like try and get it as a 3rd map or use it as like veto bait. Not that makes it. So I think like that's an example there of maybe where you looked at the win rates and were like, let's get them on Ancient. And it's like, mate, I'd have gone to like the middle map. Like, here's the difference. Would you have lost on, I don't know what Fnatic's best map, let's say Fnatic's best map's Inferno. Would you lose on Inferno to an underdog team? Probably way less likely, if you know what I mean.
That's actually, I want to pick your brain on that one real quick, because it's kind of the thought that we were talking about. We were doing a little bit of digging on this when we were talking about best of 5 grand finals and how, you know, you want to have those for just the most prestigious events. And so it really is something that you almost can't train for unless you are good enough to make it to the grand finals, in which case you'll get that experience. But then that's the advantage the champion holds, is that he's been there before. So he knows what it feels like to play a grand finals, a best of 5 grand finals. I really liked that line of reasoning on your take. And so, the other side of that coin is, do you want to have formats that are only available in certain tournaments like this, where, you know, it's like maybe you have a best of 5 grand final, but then to have an also a format that's very uncommon that doesn't get run into that often? Do you feel like there are too many a format is a good thing to have in this sort of scenario where it doesn't get that much, like you say, that much opportunity for experience for teams? Or going into the major, should the format be something more like double elim groups or something that the teams are much more familiar with because it's what they play throughout the year?
What I hate about the tournament calendar in Counter-Strike is that, like, as you say, you would in theory want the major to be a format that people are super well accustomed to. So then they have their best chance. They understand strategically how to approach it. So like, I would like one of my favorite circuits in sports is the tennis circuit, because basically all Grand Slams have the same format, all 4 of them. They're on different surfaces and all that, different times of year, but it's the same exact format. The finals, they're all best of 5 the whole way through. Now, in the smaller tournaments, it's normally best of 3 in those, and some of them have double elim, or well, not double elim, but they have like components where it's like a Snow Sweet Snow. You join later on if you're a top seed, don't join the first match. So some of those have different formats. I'm fine with using weird formats if you use them for other tournaments. Like, in my opinion, if you have best of 3 Swiss, I can live with the results. Yeah, there's still going to be the odd person where, because it's randomly seeded or whatever the fuck system they use, Buchholz or something, whatever they use here is still going to mean some matches are unfair, like G2 playing Cloud9. But aside from that, if it was a best of 3, I could live with them losing 3 out of 5 and not qualifying qualifying. I do think that it's a combination of it all. It's a weird format. You have BO1s, and actually, by the way, there's an angle people don't bother looking at. Getting the team in a BO1 means the chance of the upset are way higher than the BO3. Now, there's all these factors that aren't really at your control. So yeah, I would rather, like whatever we essentially use for the Colognes and Katowices, I'd rather the Major had a similar format. So you've been through it before.
So I'm kind of landing on that boat as well. And then you've sold me on the idea of having the best of fives just for like very specific tournaments, and it doesn't even need to be majors in that sort of scenario. Like could have Katowice, Cologne, fall finals for Blast, right? You know, that's an arena event. That could be something, right? And then you go from there, and then the major is just, you know, as consistent a format as possible. It seems like that would be an interesting kind of line to go down.
I'll give you an angle that, because you know, one of the things in my video was I pointed out how many people were doing the FaZe Clan is bad thing of like saying the first part of the point, but then not following through on the inference. So here's one for you, Semmler. Do you remember all those pros demanding that they don't want to play Blast anymore because Blast's old format was double a limb, and you used to play the low bracket final, win it, and you used to get an hour for dinner, and then you played the final. So that meant you could play 2 best of 3s, you could play 6 maps. Dude, I'm being told every BO5 set 10 hours. Not funny how the 3-0 ones are really quick, but I was being told, oh, that's impossible. It's practically like being a prisoner of war in a Japanese camp. Oh, bloody hell. And then they were just fine playing 6 maps. Or they were fine, by the way, being the upper bracket team, chilling, and then watching a guy play a whole best of 3, then come and play me an hour later and I'd smack him off. Well, nice fair game. Nice to play again. Do business with you next month. They're all cool with that, because the dumb thing about pro players, guys, you don't know, these guys aren't smart. They're just really good at video games. They just never thought that through. They never thought, well, that format's a bit similar, like at 6 maps. That's the problem. I said 5 was too many. They never thought that one through. They never actually figured out what principle they were based on. What they thought was this. Everyone who sees one BO5 that goes really long and they go, this is too long. Yes, the extreme example. Like, you do know, here's an example, but you might not know. One of the greatest matches ever in tennis history was the Wimbledon 2008 final. And it went all 5 sets. It went to tiebreakers. It lasted hours and hours, to the point that at the end, it was starting to get a bit dark. And the loser even said it was actually hard to see the ball sometime. Now, logically, that's a shit final, Semmler. At the end, you couldn't see the ball. Lasted hours and hours and hours. You know, the TV time was probably wrecked, all that. But it's considered the greatest match of all time. That's why, by the way, guys, I don't claim to be like a revolutionary, visionary thinker in everything I say. I've just lived a lot longer than most of you, and I had interests outside of esports and in other esports, and I was able to learn things from those. So I understood that principle, that actually the games that push the boundaries of how much you can like think and compete in your stamina, when they go like that between the best players ever, that is the best match ever played. Now, it's not ideal. You wouldn't want every match to be like that. That would ruin it. I'm with the players on that. But what the players can't see, they're blinded to it, is when sometimes these things are beneficial. Like I said, maybe they test something else. Maybe eventually you realize, like, actually, it wasn't just like who's the best at CS. Because that's the other thing that's so unfair about those discussions. You know, when everyone says, but we all agree we want the best CS. Like I said last time, then get rid of cameras, put them all in a booth, don't even have any fan interaction, don't put pressure on them, have them play. In fact, you know what you should do? You should do it like a blind, you should almost do it like a blind interview. You shouldn't even know who you're playing. Nameplates off. You're just playing against a team on a map. You play the games. You don't even know what round of the tournament you're in. At the end, no pressure. Whoever's the best wins. Now, here's the spoiler, guys. In that scenario, someone like Forz will fuck around to win the whole thing. Someone like fucking Complexity might be like a back-to-back champion. But you know why you wouldn't want that? Because everything you actually like about professional Counter-Strike contains those elements that make it worse for Complexity and Forz, that make it so inexperienced punishes them, makes it so that they're scared of the name Simple and Nico shooting them in the reverse POV, makes it so that when they're on a stage, they start thinking, I've never been here before. Oh my God, I wonder if my mom's watching. Fuck, like that was supposed to be our map. You actually want those things built in. That's half of the enjoyment of the sport. One of the things I had to learn about esports, and it's why people might understand that I can withstand any amount of my favorite players losing. So everyone might know I was a massive Device fan from very early on. I've seen him lose a billion matches, but what I understood was this, Semmler. the pain you feel when he loses and that he feels is absolutely necessary, because it is the inverse of the pleasure and the success of winning and being the guy who didn't choke in that match. And I knew that if he ever breaks through like he did, you're not just going to have like, oh, he won a match. Like, it's going to be like it amplified times 1,000. Like, you think Device, like, I'll tell you right now, if you asked him, he would almost certainly say the last major, the Starladder one where everyone counted them out and they had dropped off, I'll guarantee that was the most satisfying. I'll guarantee that was the one where they were like it was not only like that we won and all this, it's like this time even we weren't supposed to win. We weren't supposed to be able to do it. Everyone said we couldn't. That makes it even better. So as a result, if you're going to enjoy that aspect, you've got to take the other side of it. In English, we have a saying, we say you got to take the rough with the smooth. Like, they're both like two sides of the same coin. You can't pick to have one. It's why so much utopian thinking is flawed, because utopian thinking is stuff like, we should never say anything that's offensive. Well, then you can never say anything true, because the truth offends people.
There's a purpose to suffering as well. That's something that needs to be kept in mind. There's all sorts of things to be mentioned there. But yeah, bang on the money, man. Let's move on to Group B then, and see what we have here, because Group B, excuse me, was well, I mean, good to see that despite everything, that Na'Vi were able to just come in and get business done. You know, because there's obviously we've just been covering the past few weeks, Richard's articles behind the Iron Curtain, covering all of the
did we actually mention, by the way,
CIS region?
I don't know if we mentioned it on last week's episode, but so maybe it's fresh news for the show. Dude, there's another piece of context none of us knew. You saw that Simple did a tweet saying that he was going to see his mum and that he hadn't seen her since the fucking thing began in February. Dude, that means he didn't even slump hard, but when his numbers were dropping off, no one knew he was just not only away from home, he's not in any way met his mum since then. Like, that's a pretty big piece of information. Like, that in itself could help explain all these problems in Na'Vi.
Somebody actually did a side-by-side where it's like, Simple stats before he got to see his mom and after, and it's just like massive bump up. So that may very well be the thing, because I mean, it's easy to overlook unless you're plugged into that side of the scene, just, the impact that all of this has had on Simple and him sticking his neck out. And you got to give credit to Richard for actually including that in his article, that aspect of the story, which is that Simple stuck his neck out in a way that not a lot of people are willing to do. And he probably got he did get metric shitloads of abuse for it. And so not only is he having to show up and perform, and not is he having to live out of bags in hotels, but then he's getting his fan base turning on him as well. Those who don't agree with his point of view, his perspective, turning on him as well. And it's just, the fact that he's made it this far and then not being able to see family as well on top of that. Yeah, it's just been a brutal sort of scenario. Almost willing to, it's like you always have to try and keep context in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
But Na'Vi, they managed to pull through. They had a couple of good games. Excuse me, against Illuminar, first round. Mao's second round, and then they just made short work of Outsiders in the third. So nice, smooth work here for Na'Vi. I mean, it's just good to see. It's what you want to see, because you want to see FaZe getting through top of the pack. You want to see Na'Vi getting through top of the pack, and then the pack can form behind them as we go into the big event. So already that's super solid. Was there any major takeaway you had there from Na'Vi?
No, they just looked a bit better. Obviously, like you're saying, it wasn't like it was the craziest competition. Mouse is all right. Outsiders can be tricky to play. And even then, there was like a map that looked half decent for Outsiders. But they got through. They got the win. That's all that matters. I would say, if anyone saw recently that article where the Nero guy did the article about like inconsistency, which you have to understand, what he means by that is like the raw delta between like your lowest and your highest point. So it didn't mean if the number's really big, you're a bad player. What it meant was you're just a very inconsistent player performance-wise. One of the highest players with inconsistency, like top 10 in the world, was Bit from Na'Vi. So what that means is this isn't Bit from last year. He isn't having a great tournament after tournament after tournament after. He's having tournaments that are utter shit. But the sad thing is, because people are fools, they just go, Simple must be failing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Blade didn't know what the strats were and has his map pull fucked. Like, no, what happened was last year, you were getting way more than you should have out of a fucking LAN rookie. Now he's come back down to earth a bit, and now he has tournaments that are good and tournaments that are bad. This is the normal expectation of like young players, even when they have an elite skill set. That's why Modesty took a while to charge up. That's why sometimes, like Flit in or Outsiders now is really good some events. Yeah, he's not as good as next events. Like, that's just the way normal players play. I don't think people realize the Simples and Zeros of the world have utterly broken the minds of fans. They think it's really possible. Like, it's even the same in sports, mate. People think when they watch someone like Ronaldo, where, like, if people don't know, when Ronaldo played for Real Madrid, he scored more than a goal a game, Semmler, right? You have to understand, if you're like a really good striker, if you just score like, let's say like 3 out of every 4 games, you're one of the best players in the whole league, maybe in the world. Like, those are impossible numbers. So if you take what is essentially a statistical outlier and make that your pattern, you are going to be disappointed in everyone. You're going to think everyone sucks. You're going to think Nico's done forever because he didn't have a great RMR. You're going to think, oh my God, what else happened to Config? I guess his head's gone. Like, no, they're just not superhuman. Some people are, but there's very few. There's only 2 or 3 that exist at any one time, as you can see.
Can always have a power spike. That's the other thing that you really need to keep in mind when you're looking at these. That's why it was worth mentioning Acor and his performance at this RMR for Game Religion, because I mean, he had a power strike. He was just it looked like he couldn't miss at times. It was amazing to see, great to see, but it is something you need to keep in mind, that you can have an overperformance and then, like you say, they come back down to earth. I mean, it's still worth mentioning that Electronic and Simple across 4 maps are still the top 2 rated players in that
that's
RMR.
Normal Na'Vi business, exactly. Because that's, I told people, if you went and looked at Pro League, dude, it was mental. Na'Vi, the team, wasn't even high up as fragging. And for players, the highest was Simple, and I think it was like 11th or something. Like, dude, we're used to Na'Vi, for real, by default, having the most firepower. They fuck around and have 3 players in the top 12, and then that's normal for them. So what you see in here is, this is what happens when the best players in the world just play average. Like, yeah, all of a sudden, maybe you're not the best team by far.
And man, it is worth mentioning again, just props to Electronic. I mean, it really is like the Blade Simple, the Blade system coming in, where it's just like, just forming him over the years, essentially, just getting him so used to the system where he'll still be able to maintain an individual fragging level while calling. Like, that's just such a sick development there from Blade, and just so happy to see it panning out on this Na'Vi team, because, man, like, it's so cool to see Electronic just continue to fucking just crank numbers out, despite the fact that he's the one calling the shots for the team, and he did it with seemingly without missing a step. That's the absolutely mad thing as well. So, big props to him there. I mean, as far as Group B is concerned, there weren't any, let's say, major upsets. I felt like it was much more in line with expectations. Like Na'Vi topping the group, terrific. That was super solid to see. Really happy to see. I mean, everybody made it. After that, it's kind of like where they made it. So, I mean, if anything, ENCE, talking about how we get some teams that may have really gotten a good break to go their way in this group format, ENCE make it top 2 in this group. But then you're like, oh man, ENCE top 2 in the group, fantastic. You got to take a look at who they played as well, though. They played first match against Heat, and then second match against Falcons. And then third in a best of 3 is Big. So, I mean, it's like, again, Big, it's a team that's struggling to find an identity right now. It's not exactly one of the heaviest hitters. Definitely a threat.
They also had like stand-ins as well. Like the Farven guy wasn't playing. Like he couldn't play this tournament. So they had like a gimp lineup too.
You're really getting just like the perfect run through the RMR if you're ENCE. And I guess credit where credit's due. They didn't stumble it. They didn't fumble it, and give up a win that they by all means shouldn't have given up. They actually got the job done in 3. So
that saying, it comes from American culture where they say, keep the same energy when this happens, right? Okay. I'm just going to use that now because I'm getting really sick. Like, people used to say this thing, you probably heard it before, Semmler. They used to go, what happens is HLTV is where really smart people go to pretend to be stupid, and then Reddit's where really stupid people go to pretend to be smart. It's like, no, it isn't. They're both full of morons, you idiot. You fucking idiot. There's no clever people there. All the people like Yanko, they don't post on HLTV, you imbecile, because it's a shit fest of nothing. When they're all being idiots, they're not pretending. That is who they are. So I'm sick and tired of this game that people play where they go like this. They go, when they win like a BO1 online, they're like, hey, Falcons is pretty good. Like, hey, don't count them out, man. What, Heat? Like, I think actually, like, fucking Kenny S should join Heat and play with them. Like, oh, what the fuck? Like, Bad News Eagles. Like, you didn't get the coin at the last major. I picked Bad News Eagles. Then keep that same energy when they play against the top team. And when the top team beats them, you don't go, they only beat Bad News Eagles. The team that you were just saying is really good. The team that you're dunking on people with. So which is it? Because I don't think these teams are good. I'm with you, Sam. Like, that was an easy run for ENCE. If ENCE hadn't done that, and by the way, on Nuke, they almost fumbled it against Big. If they didn't do that and they lost any games, that would make me start to think, fuck, there's some problems here, because obviously you bungled Pro League a little bit. You didn't get quite on. But all in all, luckily it's fine. You did the 3-0. You haven't shown me anything yet. Like, I still need to see you play someone good and beat them. And sorry, big without Favre. And just like that team, by the way, was actually playing quite well. They just didn't have the firepower. They didn't have like the star players they're supposed to have. So I'm reserving comment on Ents, but good news is they're playing this weekend at that ESL Challenger thing in Rotterdam. They're going to play at a tournament that has Eternal Fire and a few other Maus and these other teams. So they're going to have a chance to show some of those teams. If they can win that tournament, now I can get a little bit hyped. I can start to maybe get some cheeky underdog bets going for the major, but I've got to see something first.
That's the thing. You got it. Like, I don't feel like we saw anything. Like, we really saw the true character events of this new roster and what they're capable of, because those first two matches, that's the thing. When it's like you look away, you look back, it's like, oh man, Ents top of the group. Who do they play? And then you're like, okay. Well, if they didn't actually win those two matches, those first two matches, Big, fair enough. It could have been, a little dicey. Big definitely played well. Tabson, oh man, I feel for Tabson, man. He really is, committed to this big project. I mean, he's signed a multi-year deal. He's clearly got equity in the team. I mean, it is a big project for him, and he's directly invested and involved in it. But man, it's brutal. It's brutal to watch.
Problem is, when you say that, right? You have to understand, guys, all equity is not made equally. Like, I'd like to have equity in FaZe Clan. Equity in Big Clan, who gives a shit? That's like having equity in like a fucking just a corner shop versus having it in what Walmart or something, like, it's all well and good. But here's the thing. My problem with that angle is, the main thing that makes Big and CSGO relevant and potentially a good team is Tabson playing. The second he stops playing, like, I hope he can craft the next players. They can make it a German tip, but you can't know. Unfortunately, that could be like, a slice of nothing, basically, couldn't it?
Where does he go as well? Because, I mean, if God B is back in a coaching role, if he were ever to try and step back, I mean, do they replace God B and put him into the coaching role? Does he step back entirely into the roster? It may very well be just, that is going to be the play going forward. I mean, it really is frustrating to see that we're still kind of having at least a little bit of a conversation about Searson as to whether or not he's going to be consistent or not. But it seems like he actually did have a pretty decent tournament, all things considered. Finished the RMR with a 1.2 rating, like, across 9 maps. It's not too shabby. That's what you need out of a star. So, they had that going for him as well, which made things more competitive for Big for sure. But, yeah, I mean, it's just as far as Ents, it's like, take that placement, take that performance with a grain of salt, guys. Don't get too ahead of yourselves when it comes to your predictions going into the main event, because it is something worth considering that it could be a bit bumpy at the beginning. One team, okay, this was a fun one to watch, actually, was OG. And the reason why I say that is because going into this event, I saw Innershine do his, who is the FaZe analyst, right? And who's, clearly got a head on his shoulders. He had OG as not going through, no chance at all going through the groups. And so definitely kind of like, okay, we'll keep an eye on this. That's
angle for you. You want my angle?
All right, go for it. Maybe okay, hold on real quick. I'm just thinking if Innershine is saying it because maybe he's scrimming against OG and they're really struggling in scrims or something. And so he's seeing something that we're not seeing, that we haven't seen on official servers. And maybe he's got access behind the scenes. So when he's saying he's like guaranteed not going through, I was just like, holy shit. Okay, I guess we have to keep an eye. But OG make it through 3rd seed. What was your take on it?
That's the problem. What you've just described almost certainly is what's happening. What's happening is his teams have scrimmed against them, or his old teams. I remember he comes from Mouse originally. So our teams around the level of that squad are playing them. They're probably playing online matches too, and he's watching them. And what he's done, which is his biggest flaw, is he's thought that all matches are the same in Counter-Strike, and he doesn't understand that an RMR is different from a random online comp.
Seriously? Is that so it?
I never take scrims seriously. That's why I actually tell people I don't want to know what's happening in your scrims, because I'm not going to go off that. Like, you can tell me this team beats you 10 out of 10 times. If I think that you're going to beat them and all the map, I'm going to say you're going to win. So one of my problems is this happens all the time with pro players, coaches, and especially like in League of Legends, it's really bad. What people don't know is this is why players say really stupid things. Like, their team will come 9th twice in a tournament, and you'll go, this team's bad. And they'll go, you don't know what you're talking about. And like, well, I'm not watching your scrims, am I? And also, scrim isn't an official game. So in scrims, yeah, you might be winning 70%. So you're like, we're really good. You just don't know anything. No, I just don't know what your imaginary made-up scrim books are worth. You think they're worth loads. You think it's like Bitcoin. I think they're like fucking one of those tokens that went to zero. It's worth nothing. So what I'll say is that the mistake there is what that really meant was these are the hot teams. Because I noticed, for example, he picked that Sangal team that barely lost to Mouse at the end. He had them as one team that was going through. Well, I can see why. Because if you watch like the Soulfly guy play and you watch them play like some random online match, they're going to look pretty decent. But they've never done anything like going to an RMR. They've never had this, they've never even been in this position to fail. So the difference is, you look at the players OG has. Look, they're not like some top tier player, but that's a pretty decent set of talents right there, mate. Remember, Dexter was in the semi-final of the last major. Nexa was in the final of the second to last major. There's a bunch of players there that are just good. And the skill level also. This is LAN. I don't give a fuck about online CS, homie. Let me know on LAN when that fucking Skrunk guy can do anything aside from have a name like some sort of fucked up cartoon character. Skrunk. Let's see. I hope he's from fucking like Sweden or something, man. That's ridiculous, that name. And he's just shit at the game. I'm just saying it. He wasn't good. So that's where people always love that hipster take. Because remember, what he has there that we don't have is insider knowledge. But one thing I learned a long time ago is be really careful how you apply insider knowledge. I've said it on this show before, so I'll use this example again. Team Liquid in 2 straight majors tricked Chad into picking them to win the tournament. It was the Face It major and then IM Katowice, and both times they never got past semis. So like in that scenario, mate, you just got all the scrim box and you tried to cash him in for real money. And it was like when you went to the fucking, in the casino, it's like, yeah, you can't cash in the chips here, sir. Like you have to play with them in the casino only. Like, that's what scrim books are, mate. You can't leave. You can't leave with them. So it might be suggested or something like what it might suggest, by the way, is maybe the Sangal team in practice is really good. Maybe some of their players like the Soulfly guy look pretty skilled. Maybe one day he will be a top player and he'll be on Ents or Mouse or something like that. But right now, that hasn't happened yet. So look, I actually liked reading the article. Like I liked seeing he picked a lot of different teams. He was picking against OG. That's quite interesting. The problem is that's not the same as being like, I have the crystal ball. I know what must happen. Like, you know, I think people have got to take everything with different grain of salt, haven't you?
It is refreshing. I think it is refreshing to get to like to be thinking about like that angle where he may have access to information behind the scenes, but then you also have to kind of take your eye test into things and be like, okay, but hold on, like I've seen these players play. What is the mix? You're trying to balance it all out and find your way. It was just fun as a thought experiment to see like, okay, what's going on here? What is actually happening? Because if you're replacing bets, it's just like, ooh. But OG making it through, man. I mean, solid work on them. Heroic make it through on their side of things as well. Vitality make it through. I mean, everybody kind of just makes it through. They drop the ball. That is, I guess, the Vitality is probably the one where I was just like, you should also be one of those teams that's really just kind of crushing through this on a 3-0 streak. You shouldn't really be dropping anybody in this group, you know, apart from Navi. If you ran into Navi or something like that in the 1-0 or 2-0, you know, okay, fine, fair enough. But for Vitality to drop a map to big, I mean, that kind of just backs up your point in that in best of 1 formats. It's you can still be the heavily favored team, but it's a best of 1. Anything can happen.
I mean, I'm just going to say this right now, right? I know right now they're actually not as mega on this map, but big on Dust 2. Those two just go together. That's like fucking white on rice in it, mate. That's mental. Like,
Germans,
just classic.
Germans and Dust 2. I mean, come
you
on.
want to play against fucking Big, Tabson, and Sirison on Dust 2. Well, good luck. Enjoy your best of 1. Oh, did it not go how you wanted? What the fuck did you expect? Like, in that scenario, if I'm Vitality again, like I said before, I'm being a bit more cynical with my veto. Like, what I'm actually doing is I'm not vetoing like punish maps, vetoing into my best map. What I'm doing is I'm getting maps that like it's really hard for you to ever beat me on. I might even in that scenario, Semmler, take a map we're both bad on and go, you know what? I've got Ziwu, I've got Spinks, I've got these. I'll just frag out. You know, that's how I'm going to win this game. I'm never giving you anything you have comfort on. Because I always think certain maps, I don't care what the win rate is. If Glaive is playing on Nuke, he's going to have a chance. It's Glaive's map. If fucking Carrigan's playing on Mirage, I don't care what the win rate is. That's his map. If Big is playing on Dust 2, I'm always going to have my eyes open. So it's just one of those classic vetoes where like you wish you could get it back now, but at the time you would have looked epic that you beat them on it or whatever, you know.
Yeah. You're trying to like read in the Matrix. I mean, maybe they did really just think like ZywOo's going to hard carry us no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's their map or not. You know, ZywOo's just going to come alive and dominate. Could very well have been that sort of scenario, right? Because ZywOo has been showing some more pep in his step lately. So you know that can mess with your head too, where you just feel invincible. It's like you got a guy like ZywOo on your team who's just, you know, indomitable. It's like, well, whatever map, we'll just go and beat him. And turns out,
mate, they got beaten by Sin like they were config.
We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's coming up in a bit, guys. And then, I mean, That's like that was the thing. Like coming into this group, it's not as spicy as our RMRA, where Astralis and G2 didn't make the cut. Group B, I really do feel like, apart from like some seeding where outsiders maybe could have been ranked higher than Mouse Sports or something like that. It's like OG definitely getting up there above Vitality, Heroic. Okay, fair enough. But it feels like the teams that I expect to make did it.
Here's a topic I have. Here's another thing people don't talk about. Are we all just cool that in Europe you have 2 RMRs and in theory they could be vastly different levels of ability and like who knows how they're seeded? Like what? Why?
What's going on there?
No, that's what I mean. Like what determines who goes in which RMR?
It's true. It's true.
I don't know how they determine that. I doubt it's a very good system. Because if you remember the last RMR, the one for Antwerp, was ridiculous, mate. They had one RMR that was super stacked, and the other one was like, who the fuck are these guys? So, like, that's one of the problems I also have when we're going to say things like sentences like this. G2 failed by not making the midget. Which one was G2 in, mate? Was G2 in the one where it's all the nobodies and it's easy to beat, or was G2 in the hard one? You'd have to look it up, right?
Already my theory is out. Hold on. Because what I was thinking is they've just went, no, they can't have done that. No, never mind. I thought they'd have just gone by their ESL world ranking and just literally just gone down the list. FaZe, Group A, Na'Vi, Group B, and then just like literally just go side to side down the ranking and try and split it, divvy it up that way.
I imagine it's maybe even random, who knows?
But it probably is random because Na'Vi and Vitality are ranked second and third, or third and second. Vitality are ranked second, Na'Vi ranked third, but they're both in Group B. So already you can't have that, just like the one on each side. You can't even have that kind of combination. So yeah, I don't know. It is frustrating. It is frustrating when you get like what a seemingly weaker group, or we just had somebody punching above their weight in Group A, and then all of a sudden that threw things out of whack with the G2 scenario. So at the same time, it's like G2 kind of dropping the ball. Could have definitely
the team. Because obviously, it's actually in the end, like Big making it. Who knows if that's any good? Like they can be a decent team, but I don't think they'll do much at the major. I'd rather have G2 than Big there if you give me that choice. The team I am glad out of the bad ones that made it. Because I'm not that hyped about Mouse. They can just look shit. They almost lost to the Sangal team a bunch of times too, right? The team I actually am excited for is Outsiders. Because obviously they've had that whole drama with the team name and they lost Yukindar and they busted left and they've had to like re-up with players like Fame, who by the way has turned out to be like a revelation. Like who the fuck was this guy? He's actually looking pretty good in their team. James doing a good job. That's the team I want in the major. Because what I love about teams like that is they're just a fucking really hard test. Like it's not easy to play that team. I don't care what their level is. That's a team that is a tricky puzzle every time. So if you play at the major, I want you to have to play them in like a 3-2 match again and make it like really tense and you feel like, oh fuck. And that'll show that if you make it to the playoffs, maybe you actually are good. Like, I don't know that they'll make the playoffs, but they'll make whoever does work for it, I'll tell you that. And there's a lot of top teams, I can tell you right now, would way rather play like Heroic or fucking, let me think, what else? Even maybe Ents. They'd rather play these teams than Outsiders, mate. Outsiders is annoying. They're really tough to play.
Yeah, they've got that slow, measured style that can just drain you throughout a best of 3 that it's just going to be incredibly difficult. Yeah, that's a good point. The thing is, like Maus and Sangal, now that you mention it, for me, it just like Maus are essentially the Maus NZX team. They're essentially the academy team that has been bumped
or whatever. NXT, I think it was.
NXT. So if they're playing against Sangal, those are also guys that they probably would have been playing a bunch against. And so that's kind of like that pocket pick kind of situation where it's just like they've probably played a lot against each other in qualifiers, so they probably will play it equal, like even, or above. Like Sangal will punch above their weight in that sort of matchup just because they'll be familiar with each other. At least recently. But yeah, as far as the RMRB, it was much more, there weren't really any big upsets there, no big surprises per se. And things kind of like went according to plan. Let's figure out like what
it's just the way you said there haven't been any big upsets, and one of the only upsets that was big beating Vitality.
Well, there you go. It was on my mind.
Just a turn of phrase.
On my mind without even realizing it. All right, now let's talk
Germany
about
beating France. Who saw that coming, eh?
Dude, wait, what?
Said Germany beating France. Who saw that coming, eh? I guess that Dust 2 pick was like they chose to play on the battleground of the main O line.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, what year is it? Oh, it is 2022.
Exactly. There you go.
What a world. All right. Well, speaking of the world, we're going to go to the other side of it. North American qualifier for the RMR. And I mean, this one already, I guess there was one big upset that I think was surprising to say the least, is that Complexity don't make the cut. That I definitely had, after watching Complexity's recent performance, I definitely thought that Complexity were at least going to make top 6 in this one comfortably. I thought they would be in the mix, and for them not to make the cut, and in the fashion that they did, where it's just going all the way the distance, and you have this system in place where
they had a tiebreaker, if you remember. It was
exactly.
a tiebreaker they didn't get through on. Yes,
you have to go through a tiebreaker in order to make it through. It's so incredibly frustrating. Just because, I mean, you have a format where in the RMR, in the EU side of things, it's like, yeah, you eight teams. You split it down the middle. There you go. Here you have to figure out a way to have 6 teams instead of the 8, and so Complexity get left out in the cold, and Imperial, in one of a deep run, one hell of a long day. Talking about long days of Counter-Strike, Imperial had to go all the way for that one. There you go. Imperial managing to go above the top and actually get that last spot. So you have O Nation, who, cold Taco, and now you got Imperial, the Fallen for FNX. Somehow, some way, they've managed to make it so that they can actually get into this event and play in front of their fans in Brazil. So, I mean, there's a lot to touch on there.
I've got an angle no one's brought up. Are you ready?
Go for it.
So there's 2 points I'm going to make. One, Imperial, it was bonkers they qualified for this. Because if people don't know, let me just run through how their tournament went. So they started off and they beat Azurus, who nobody gives a fuck about. Then they played and they lost in overtime to 9Z. Okay, that's not, by the way, if you know, 9Z is actually around their level. It's not even that big a diss. Okay, close game. Then they went and they lost to 0-0 Nation, their former teammates. So then they had to play against the team called Nouns, right? Oh, they played Team 1, rather. They played Team 1, fellow Brazilian team, really close series. They played Team Nouns. Team Nouns almost beat them on the first map, and the third map would have been Vertigo, which they never played Imperial, but they got through it. Then they played Pain Gaming, super close series. Then they played Call in another tiebreaker, beat them in the absolute dying rounds at the end of the whole game. So that took everything from the guys in Imperial. Are you ready for an angle that no one brings up because it destroys the whole last dance? First of all, this never was a last dance. So you're all going to think, no, Thorin, but remember, like, Bolts, Fallen, and Fur were in a really good SK Gaming line. That wasn't the one that won the major. Bolts wasn't in the team that won the major. They had, but then they had Fallen, Fur, and FNX were in the ones that won the major. FNX wasn't in the lineup now. He was the coach. And if you know how bad FNX was this year, that's the only reason they had a chance to qualify. I'm telling you right now, if FNX was playing, they don't qualify because who replaced FNX? Cello, the guy who actually had like his breakout tournament, even though he's mega deep into a career at like tier 3 and tier 2 that he's been on for years in Luminosity and these other squads, MIBR. Like, this is an example of where like that no narrative is actually actively harmful to the story of these players. Because if it was the last dance, they wouldn't have made it. Like, it actually was the fact that they brought in the Cello guy. It was a game changer that got them through. And even then, like I say, there were 3 or 4 times they could have lost these scenarios. They wouldn't even have been in the last match. And if you look especially how the Complexity series played out at the end, that was the ultimate example of the one upside Imperial has in this game. They've got 2 technically. One is that Fur just chooses to go down to their level to play with Fallen, to play an Imperial when he could definitely be in a better team if he really gave a fuck about Counter-Strike. And the other angle is this: when they do get into really big games for them, which is low-level games, like it's the last match of the whole tournament, if they're playing against a young player or an experienced player, they do have an edge, because Fallen and Fur do play out clutch scenarios, do play out late rounds like a top pro does, and they put pressure on you. So if you're in a 1v2 against Fallen, what does everyone do? One guy defuses the bomb and one tries to pick up. Well, he always kills the first guy, and now he just gets the bomb planted for free. Like, in those scenarios, like, those guys are too inexperienced. They are seeing the names and just pissing their pants. Like, my joke on Twitter was, you know, the old thing about Fallen was, oh, he's the librarian because he makes the opposing arena turn into one. Like, joke, he's not even in arenas anymore now, and he wouldn't be making any of them turn into fucking libraries, except if he's in fucking Rio, by the way. Except he's not going to be in the playoffs there either, so don't worry about it. Now he's actually turning into rooms in the kindergartens, because if you've got a bunch of little kids around, he'll make them just piss themselves and run around screaming and crying for their mum. That's all he can do now. But I tell you what, it works. That does work when you're in a close game. That does work when those guys haven't got the experience. So thought in general, I don't give a fuck that Imperial qualified. Like, saying he qualified out of the America's RMR is like saying you're the most fucking morally put together stripper on the pole, my dude. Like, it doesn't mean anything. As soon as you finish the sentence, it becomes way less interesting. So Imperial, whatever, at least they're there. They're sort of the America's version of outsiders. They'll at least make some of the lesser teams think before they make it to the playoffs. That's good. Now, the complexity angle, I think, is brutal. Because when you go back and look, they lost against Team Liquid. That's easily the best team in the field. 0-0 Nation. Now, that one's a brutal one. That's one where it wasn't even the big pressure match. You should be winning that if you call. That's the one you should really look back and kick yourself. But I will also say, when you go to that match against Imperial, I don't want to hear any excuses if you're a complexity player. You had that game in your hands over and over and over again, but you let it go by playing silly Counter-Strike, being a bit scared at times. People were fragging out, playing a little bit more passive than they should. Don't go through a smoke and challenge them. It's Fallen back there, don't you know? Mate, it's busted up Fallen. This is like, you know, in the UFC, I always think the way you know the champion, because if you don't know the way the UFC matchmaking works, they're not idiots. When you were a former champion, they don't just throw you out and put you against bad people, because then you're already going down in stock. They purposely pair you against the next up-and-coming potential champion, because they want him, before you're totally washed, to get a win against you on his resume to build the hype that he'll be the champion next, right? In that scenario, right, this is exactly when, if you're a young player, you should want to play Fallen. And when you play him, you should play him as though he isn't some legendary player who's going to hold the angle. Oh, he always wins around. He doesn't. They don't. Counter-Strike careers don't last that long. Now is when is your chance to beat Fallen, like 9Z did, like some of those teams were able to. This is what you got to be playing like. So I think in that scenario, Cole just psyched themselves out of that match. Like, they don't deserve to be at the major. Look, I know it's a fucked up scenario, but if you look at this tournament beforehand and you say, I'm sending this many teams, they definitely make it out. It's like you say, they wouldn't have been top 2. Like, it's shocking that EG made it out, but they'd be like in your top 4. You'd have had them top 4 to get out though. So I don't like, unlike the G2s of the world, I look at this one and I'm like, you guys just fucked this up. You guys lost the best of 3s. Like, no one made you do that.
Yeah, shot the bed a little bit on this one. I mean, that is really the conclusion that it comes to, because going into this group, it was a clear prediction, especially after their recent performance, where you're just like, yeah, okay, they're going to be in a top 4 to 5 sort of scenario here with the RMR, and they have to make it. They absolutely have to make it. And it really makes me wonder if there's going to be any kind of movements over on the complexity side of things, or if they're just going to take it on the chin and just keep with this roster, keep with this organization, and not make any changes, because this is definitely a must-win kind of scenario. So it does make me wonder if what they're going to be thinking about over there on the complexity side of things. But
and here's the saddest thing. They wouldn't have been like a big name team at the major doing big run. They could have done something though. They'd have been in with a chance to beat. They could have beat some. They could have won some BO1s. They could have been in a shot in a BO3 to maybe upset a big team. So this is actually really brutal for the development of the team.
Yeah, no, it's a painful one. But all right. So let's change gears here and talk about a team that you just mentioned, Evil Geniuses. I mean, there's a team that I think was catching. I mean, obviously, the team has become a meme itself. Evil Geniuses. I mean, once upon a time, one of the most prestigious organizations in esports in general, has just fallen so far. It feels like, in terms of just not even coming close to winning tournaments, and it looks so mismanaged in terms of they have no idea what they want to do with their brand anymore. They just have people who the new generation of people who move into esports and who have no idea what esports is actually about and what the internet used to be about. And so it's just this new breed of people that are now moving in because they have money and experience or whatever. And so they feel like they know what it is. And so that's essentially what Evil Geniuses have become, tragically. All right, so that sets up the brand itself. Now they also have this 15-man roster that they're talking about here with their CSGO side of things, where they're fielding multiple rosters in a tournament, Fragadelphia. So that's that. And then they go into this one where they have Vorborg, who's calling the shots, who used to be on Copenhagen Flames, building rosters up there. And they're actually going with a I guess what the weird one that kind of caught everybody off guard was going full on international with Neil and bringing him on board. Because you kept Breeze, you kept Cirque, you kept Automatic. You can't have more than 2 Europeans on the roster and still be considered a North American team, which is why they talked about not bringing on Valde. And so here we have the play where they decide, okay, then we're going to have Hext and we're going to have Nealon on board, with Nealon calling the shots, I Kazakhstani. And so you're already just going, this is going to be rough. How is this going to pan out? Not a whole lot of confidence in this roster, considering Cirque and Breeze have just been not doing anything for freaking ever, it seems like. to the point where you got the Rat King who's making jokes about him. So the fact that Evil Geniuses are up in this group, in this RMR, if I was talking about Evil Geniuses, maybe I would have had them like going through sixth, and then it would have been a competitive sixth, as in like they had to fight tooth and nail to get there. For them to top the group 3-0 by defeating Nouns, by defeating Furia. I mean, Furia, and then 9Z as well, who showed to be definitely a team to keep an eye on, a threat. Gotta say, not too shabby. That's an interesting result from Evil Geniuses, and not saying. Well, maybe I do have to eat some crow on this one. I don't know. I don't think I was exactly saying like this is going to be a home run kind of play here with this new roster. Let's say I didn't have that much faith in the roster to start getting results this quickly. Thought if anything, it's going to take some time, but they really are picking up speed fast.
Especially because, like, look, even just getting the win over Eternal Fire at EPL was something. It showed like they've got some potential. Like, Xantares isn't a bomb, mate. Some of those players are experienced. They were the Space Soldiers players. Obviously, they have Woxic as well. They have sort of gradually get himself back in a form. But the thing for me, I thought about this tournament was, it's also like basically, people have been waiting for the old names to actually show something in this team. Like, actually, Cirque showed signs of life for once. It was actually Breeze was the one previously that was looking good. He was a cooler. Cirque had some big games. Automatic was actually fragging. Remember, that guy was playing Valorant until Stewie 2K fucking came along, came to the wood fucking cabin. Like, what are you doing out here playing Valorant, old man Automatic? Don't you know I need you for one last run? Call it the last dance, motherfucker. It's like, Stewie, I don't know if I can't keep doing it, man. These NA teams, man. The older I get, the shitter they still are. Like, he's like, no, one last time, man. And then the best thing is, obviously, Stewie got bounced as well. So, like, actually, Automatic finally looks like he's picking up CSGO again, mate. He's played enough time to get rid of the ring rust. He was always a quality player. He was never bad. Now, he was mad overrated by some people, but he was always a solid enough player. He's starting to show signs. As you say, the Neelan guy actually seems that he's pretty legit. He's been a part, at least, of, like, teams that have been at LANs and have got some history in his team. The Hexed guy is out of nowhere for me. Like, I don't know where they picked this guy up. I haven't really been that impressed. There's also some other things that, you know what, we'll wait and see how those come out to play. I don't want to reveal all my cards. This is top trumps. You don't need to know what trumps I've got. But except the fucking fire ones. So all I'll say is, like, look, I don't think they're going to be like a big time team. I don't think they can do anything at this major. But I do think at least like the Vorberg angle seems all right. He has picked up very much Vorberg type players. Like, he's looking around tier 2 and tier 3 and trying to pick this guy or make a good move. This guy's cheap. He hasn't got to buy it. It does look like he's wheeling and dealing. My problem, like I always say, is just it's Evil Geniuses. Like, you're supposed to be shooting for the moon. You're supposed to try to be one of the best teams in the world. You're supposed to be a forethought that you qualified to the major, because when you get to the major, you're going to do damage. I don't know what this team is, but fair play, like you say, to 3-0 this one. It even had a close tiebreaker against Team Liquid, by the way, and actually made them really play. All in all, just all markers are pointing up. It's just I feel like they have a ceiling. I don't know how far they can go.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, you're not expecting them to just take over. I was like, you weren't expecting a fast start from this team. You were expecting there to be some growing pains. So this is a great performance from them, I'd say. Even if it is, sure, they're not competing against European teams. It's all North America, South America, right? You know, that part of the competition. Still, you know, to see them top out like that, good on them. You know, solid work. I mean, you're right. Liquid did have that first place match to settle it. And so Liquid did manage to take that 2-0 and you know, top the group. But you know, top 2 for Evil Geniuses, I think, is a huge success. But yeah, going forward into the main event, I mean, it's a really good point to bring up Automatic, actually, to remind us that, you know, he's still in the mix and he couldn't have that veteran edge to come into it and maybe help them going into this second phase of the tournament. But you know, whether or not they're going to be actually competitive there, I find it hard to believe that they're going to be you know, doing any serious damage. At least that's pretty much it. I mean, and you can kind of say the same thing, actually. Well, I mean, you can kind of say the same thing for the next 2 teams on the list, 9Z and O Nation, where kind of feeling like, you know, 0-0 Nation, 9Z, they can be a threat. They can maybe, you know, get an upset here or there, but are they going to have a deep run in this event? I don't really watch them for that. It's more the next team down, Furia, that I'm looking at and saying, okay, well, Furia, come on, you got Queserado on this team, like, anything should be possible for this team. It should still be possible for them to actually get a run going here.
Problem with Furia is they are just wildly inconsistent, even individually this year. And quite frankly, their identity as a team, they just don't have like an edge on anyone anymore. They used to have that really unique playing style that was hard to deal with. You had to figure it out. That's all gone. Like the days when Art was being hailed as some like revolutionary agile, that's years ago at this point in time. His players, like you say, Keserato and Yuri are still really skilled players. You look at the lineup, the Safe guy, he's probably one of the most misused players I've seen. Safe, here's my take for you. No one's had this take yet. Safe in Furia reminds me of Grim in Team Liquid. Like when Grim joined Team Liquid, it's because he was hard carrying Triumph. He was fragging the fuck out. So Liquid was like, bring him on our team. But then they never used him in any way to set him up to be a fragger like that. He just had to take the fucking shit rolls that were left over. Same thing with Safe. He was hard carrying that Pain Gaming team. He looked really fucking good on the AWP. When you watch him play in this particular team, in Furia, he looks like an afterthought who almost just AWPs like one of the, like those players like Farley that are just like, look, you're in the team with the AWP, but we're not going to play around you at all. And so half the time, by the way, he ends up in like the clutch scenarios and the 1v1s, and he's at the back of the round, and it's the others doing all the work. So I feel like he's just not used properly, because when I do watch him play in matches, dude, his actual mousing as an AWP looks really smooth. It looks really good, mate. Like he can hit a lot of the mid-range shots. He looks like he could be a much better player. So I just get the sense, think about that team. That team originally had Abel J years ago, who wasn't a good AWPer. Then they had Henny, who was a good AWPer, but was actually coming off years when people thought he couldn't be a star. And he just sort of somehow like was more bang for your buck than you expect. Then obviously later they made Art the AWPer, which temporarily was okay, but didn't work long term. I don't think it's a team that understands the AWP, Semmler. I think they're a team that is just a rifle team, a bit like Team Liquid, and they're not used to having an AWP. And if they have an AWP, they're not going to set them up like they would a star AWPer and play around them and give them all the resource and let them go to work. So that's one area in Furia. Like I still think that roster never made it much better, even bringing Safe in. It's kind of the same level, and then individual performances being worse this year, they just look like a much worse squad. So I still hold hopes out that they can do upsets at the major. Maybe they could make a playoff run, but I can't see how they can do anything. Like, here's the difference. The last two majors, there's a world where they could have fucked around and been really good and gone much further and actually threatened like top teams. At the moment, Furia just looks a bit whack. Like they've kind of plateaued, and the actual ceiling on the team, they don't reach it very often.
Yeah, that's the concern. I mean, for me, it's still like the standout player on that team is always going to be Keserato, because every time I watch him, he's just doing something crazy. But yeah, it feels like it's safe to say that they're the team to keep an eye on coming out of Brazil. They still are the uncontested team that is going to be doing that's going to be representing Brazil, I think, as the best one there, because I think you would rank them higher than O Nation, at least in a head-to-head sort of fight, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The problem with the O Nation team is like some of the players that they're really relying on aren't even actually that good. Like the problem is they're players who maybe can be good and they show potential to be, but it's like they're not going to do it consistently. Like they have games where they look awesome, and they have games where they just look all right. And then the older players, like Paul Zeras, sometimes looks like the worst player in the team, or just like a very average player. So the hype around that team, it's harder to build the idea that like they're going to be some special team. I actually think Brazilian Counter-Strike is very lost at the moment. And I don't think, by the way, teams like Imperial are helping matters. But the problem is, the reason I don't totally hate the Imperial project is because, quite frankly, I get the feeling with where he's at in his career, if Fallen retires, I don't think Fur will play it anymore. I think he'll just say, fuck it. Or I don't think Fur cares about being a top team. Like, I don't know if you saw
this. Say that in the past?
When they qualify, he said in 2019 that he was retiring, then he just said it was a joke. So there you go.
I thought there was some angle of like he would only play with Fallen or something like that.
I'm not sure about that, because here's the thing. Technically, he was in Imperial before Fallen was. He was actually in a different Imperial lineup that fucking sucked. So that also might be because Fallen just left him high and dry and went to fucking Team Liquid. Because Fallen's a great guy like that, by the way. Just sell your whole country out. He's the Godfather of Brazil. Why would the Godfather? That would be like if in Godfather 3... I mean, actually, the fucking Don Corleone wasn't alive. But if the fucking Marlon Brando character in Godfather 3 went, actually, fuck y'all Sicilians, I'm going to go to Portugal. That wouldn't really be cool, would it? But y'all just forgive him for that too. Give me a fucking break. So anyway, I think, unfortunately, that Ferg, his heart isn't in CS. And he'll turn up for these matches, because this is the narrative. It's, can we make the major? Everyone says we can't. Can we go to a major in Brazil? They say, like, we're not even going to be there. We're going to be in the show. Like that seems to be firing up. That seems to be his edge. But I find it sad. Like he even said in an interview the other day, Semmler, that just making it to the IM Rio Major is better than one of the majors that he won. Fuck right off. Like, look, you're a sick player, but that is such a stupid comment. That actually implies, by the way, you're not a winner at heart. You're a sick player, but you're not a winner. A winner's all about winning majors, mate, about being at the top of the game, about testing themselves against the best players ever. Because the problem Fur has is, I just did a video on this today about him. He is an infuriating player, mate. He's one of those guys where he could have been so much better than he is. And he could have been so good for he could have been like Nico and just be like the best rifler in the world for like 5 years. That was in his locker. But the problem is, because he has these weird motivation issues, and once he got the money and once he got the majors, he started to not care as much. And then when the team dropped off, it looked like he was just phoning it in, and he wasn't doing the practice hours, and he was even telling people, like, I don't really play CS, and like, lol, and then saying all those like mad inappropriate things about his org on stream, sometimes in English, sometimes in Brazilian, or Portuguese rather. Like, he's just a guy that, he's just got some weird thing about what he cares about in this game. So if it isn't winning, I mean, I don't get what it is. Like, I still like to watch him play, but I hate seeing people waste talent. It's the same feeling I have about Shocks, mate. People don't know how good he could have been. He's already, by the way, Shocks might still be a top 10 player to ever play CSGO. Dude, he had the chance to be number 1. That's not a joke. This guy had everything. His actual game at one point was perfectly complete. He had everything. He could entry. He could win the clutches. He was the mid-round player. He could even secondary call. He could even AWP on the side. Like, someone like that. The joke is, those guys end their career and go, I had a pretty good career, won a major, was in loads. It's like, mate, you could have done everything. They could have been talking about, has Simple got to your level? Not is Ziwu better than Simple. The joke is, everyone already put Simple, Ziwu above KDS and Shocks. That's what shows you that these guys slacked, because they both had that insane ability where they could have been at the top. And one thing I'll never forgive French Counter-Strike for, ever in my life, is you had 2 players like that in one scene, and you never even put them together till they were whack. What the fuck is that? That would be like if fucking Nico and, like, let's say, like, Spinks were both from Bosnia, and they just never played together till the end of their careers. Like, come on, put it together, mate. You instantly team up with that guy if you're from a smaller country, don't you? So that's one of the things about those players. Like, Fur's one of those players as well. I think he could have done so much more. So the good upside is this. I would pick him for my Brazilian super team, but I guess he wouldn't play in it, would he? Because he wouldn't want to play for those reasons. So I guess if this is the only reason we still see him play, then I can accept it, even though it's begrudgingly.
It's the angle of one last run with Fallen. I mean, this is like it has to be the reason why they've opened it up to like all of the stages of the major now are going to be opened up to the fans, to the audience. So the RMR we're through the RMR, but like the following stages are going to have fans available to like to watch.
Do you want a good joke?
Because
Here's a little freebie.
like, there's not going to be a single Brazilian team apart from Furia. Making it to the top 8. Like, Furia is probably the only team who can actually have a chance at it.
Oh, they can, but they're not going to, probably. Who gives a shit, right? I don't think any Brazilian team's making it. And also, I mean, other people are pointing this out on shows, but I know it because I'm the esports historian. You know that whole narrative, Semmler, like, well, the Brazilian crowd is so passionate, like, they fire their teams up, and so they're going to overperform. No, go look, every tournament ever in Brazil, the Brazilian teams all underperformed and didn't do as well as they could. Like, dude, Furia couldn't even win, like, tier 2 DreamHacks. SK lost to Cloud9. Like, fucking ESL Belo Horizonte, they didn't even make it past Mouse with nothing standing in instead of fucking Oscar. Like, every time they have shit the bed in front of their home crowd. Like, it's been the opposite. So I don't think that's going to happen at all. I have no expectations for the Brazilians. But here's my joke anyway. If you look at the RMR, it shouldn't really come as a surprise that the top Brazilians were barely able to beat Nouns. Have you ever heard them fucking talk? They're like, like fucking, they're all over there. Everything's like fucking, like, it's like there's a famous skit back in the day, or a show called The Fast, oh, maybe that's not the right one I'm thinking of. Basically, there's a skit back in the day in the UK where he would just sing modern songs, but in the style of a club singer, because obviously you always have some shit club singer who's doing the tour of like the low-level circuit. It's just like, baby, will you let my band? It's like he doesn't have any singing skills, but he's just doing, it's all attitude, isn't it? Like, that's how Brazilians even talk, mate. It's mental.
Yeah, okay. But fuck, now I got sidetracked. You got me on the.
You were talking about all Brazil, the crowd, and how fucking the Brazilian teams might do well or whatever.
I thought that, dude. I thought, like, going into it, I would just think that the Brazilian fans will make the Danish fans in the Royal Arena look like amateurs. I mean, That is straight up like my assumption going into this event.
In a
is that,
sense, you're right, because they look like amateurs, because the Danish crowd was mainly like mothers and children and fucking fathers. And they were all just like, I guess we like Astralis, so like fuck heroic. Obviously, yeah, if you want to talk about being professional asshole crowd, the Brazilians take the cake, don't they? They're going to be out there going, people think I'm making this up, go and look. They for real have a chant that they pretend is a joke that is, you will die. And they have another chant, by the way, that they'll never admit. And spoiler, it's bang on in 23+1 territory. Does that give you a little clue? Can you imagine what they might be shouting in that crowd to you as a player when you go there, and what you might like to do with your arsehole? Yeah, think it through. A little bit not PC, that, isn't it? Yeah. But enough about Brazilian crowds.
They're not going to be translating the crowd mics.
No, exactly. That's
it. Maybe not piping them in too much. Well, that about sums up the RMR at least. We have, as far as the Americans are concerned, then, I mean, complexity, missing the boat, it's a crying shame. Hopefully, they'll bounce back and we'll see some more from them. But at least, it's shaping up. We got some Brazilian teams. We had the O Nation team. So if you're caring about, like, building up that narrative, right? I don't think that ESL are investing anything in this in terms of, like, actually getting cameras to the O Nation teams or to the Imperial teams and, like, trying to do anything. Although, if I'm not mistaken, shouldn't they be at ESL Challenger? Isn't Imperial going to be at Rotterdam?
No. I'm almost certainly not. I'll have a look, but I don't think so.
Is it not? Is it not what I was thinking? What was I thinking? I
thought no. Team 1 is there. That's a Brazilian team. But
yeah, you're gonna have Team 1 there.
Oh, there's another team called Fluxor. They're there too.
They didn't make both, okay. No, I thought there was going to be an event actually that ESL had that they would be able to maybe get some B-roll or something going. I'm just wondering, like, if ESL, like, you'd have to think that they're going to try and create some shoulder content around the fact that now you actually have some legendary players that are going to be attending the event. Like, you're going to want to do something to try and build up some hype in the venue, or like a show match or something. I mean, you're familiar with show matches at majors, aren't you? Like, that's something that you've
this is already announced. This is where people don't even follow the news. So I saw, like, Fix Nation from Team Liquid tweeted at Fallen, like, I hope you guys win this last game. You have to win to be there at Rio. It's like, dude, ESL cynical and already announced ages ago there is going to be a team get right against Team Fallen show match at the major.
Yeah, there you go.
Just so it was guaranteed the guy would be there. Like, that's by the way, that's how little faith ESL had in Fallen and Imperial.
Yeah.
That they were like, what? Can we just actually book like 100% that he's going to be there no matter what? Well, look, what do you mean, man? I am going to make it through the Brazil major. By the way, shall I tell you a little angle no one brought up because it's so fucking whack? You know what? In a movie, Semmler, this would be great. But in real life, this was shit. So Fallen had this whole angle that they only revealed after he qualified. That in a dream, he saw that they'd win in like overtime to qualify. But what he did, are you ready? To make the dream come true, he didn't tell anyone about, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
Where's the receipt, homie?
I know, anyone can just say that. And spoiler, here's the thing. Remember, guys, you're going to say, well, what proof could anyone have of a dream? No, you don't need proof. What would make us believe you is a concept called credibility. What it means is, how believable are you and what's your track record of telling the truth? Let me see, who would be on my top 5 least truthful CSGO pros of all time? Oh, there we go. Gabriel Fallen Toledo, the two-faced. Even his own fans call him two-faced. They just think it's cute. Like, he actually is two-faced. Mate, he's more than two-faced. He's like that fucking, like, what was he call it? The many-faced god out of fucking Game of Thrones. He's just morphing in all the faces. It's fucking insane, isn't it? It's like, what the hell? Fallen? I thought you died already. That was Fallen the librarian, bad librarian. Now I am Fallen evil fucking trickster who cons all the young players into playing for me. But now I am Team Liquid Fallen. Stewie, why are you being mean to me? I am just a fucking up-and-coming player from Brazil who wishes to make his dreams in fucking America. What's that? Now I'm evil Fallen. Maybe Leaf cheats. It'd be such a shame if all of my fans went to rid me of this tiresome young 16-year-old LA pro. Oh, it's not me that's telling him to kill himself. Oh no. I am on Gaules' stream. The locks were in, boys. This is all locks. Oh, now I am Fallen, who's on Twitter that everyone loves. Oh, I'm a great guy. Fallen, you are a legend, man. Thank you, man. Thank you. I am. I will play. I don't know if I am going to be good enough, but I had a dream that I qualified. Shut the fuck up, mate. Shut the fuck up. I'm just done. Like, at this point, it's just WWE, isn't it? Like, fair enough. It's a cool story, but like, where's the substance? Like, show me some shit in the server. Do something at this major. There you go. Do something at this major. If you do, then I'll have to give you the props. If I don't, I'll make skits. I'll do everything, motherfucker.
Dude, this is going to be it. This will be back content for years at that point, because really this is, it's like whenever,
Mate, I'm going to be like the fucking,
There has
I'm going to be
something
like
to follow.
Little John or something with my skits. I'm going to be like, skit, motherfucker. Skit,
There you go.
Goddamn. Whatever. All
right,
my
let's talk-
references are to the early 2000s or 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm kind of like, skeet. Yeah, okay.
There you go.
What I'm thinking of actually is maybe we take a quick break or a quick
let's
restroom
do
break.
it.
And we'll be back in a couple of minutes. We have, I think we'll just do the Astralis saga because
Do it.
I feel like there's been a lot going on there. So we at least have to talk about that. And then we'll do some of the questions. We'll do some of the
right.
GROGcoin questions. So guys, if you have questions to ask, make sure you get into the Insight on Esports. Well, Last Free Nation now, I suppose, moving on to Last Free Nation. But the GROGcoin, so check the Discord, put it up in the chat there if you want to get into it. And you can hold some coin and ask some questions. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
I'll just interrupt the banter, the news, all the deep discussions that we have on By the Numbers to tell you about one of the first-time deposit bonuses on esports bet, and that is, of course, their 20% bonus up to 200 USDT using our referral link in the description box below.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being patient, and hope you guys took the opportunity to grab a bite. And let's get into the thick things here. So the saga continues is the header I've got in the show notes, just because it just feels like we get one more bit of news. It's just, dribs and drabs, just the little crumbs that keep getting.
Jackson's making this fucking work. It's like tantric sex or something. Do I ever get this one? Never ends, does it? Never ends, mate.
It, dude, I swear. They're milking it for everything. And then, hey, credit where credit is. They're doing good work. It's just like they're keeping you up to date as well, because it's like the last week, where at the bottom half of it's just summing up, how far we've gotten in through this whole saga. So it's like, Astralis are still waiting on whether or not device is actually confirmed or not. But a little bit of news did come out, and it's worth touching on real quick before we get into the config Astralis complete and utter debacle. This is obviously tied to it, but so it was always a little bit weird how the report, the transfer fee that came out at the time of device was higher than what later came out in Astralis's books, as in like the money that came into Astralis for a potential buyout fee was lower than what was said was the actual transfer fee, prior to that. So this is actually something that kind of like opens that up a little bit, perhaps, where device might have doubly cucked himself in a way where he
in many ways, some would say, but yeah, in this particular way,
he's going to nip. He couldn't see the future, obviously, but he's going to nip, and supposedly he gives up around 130k euros worth of back pay and sticker fee and whatever other money that Astralis might have owed him at the time before he went to nip in order to sweeten the deal, in order to get things moving a bit faster. He left that behind in Astralis. And so that's where you may have it all kind of bouncing out, where it's like, oh, the transfer fee from nip was actually lower in the books because, well, they're making it up. So the other supposed fee, they're making it up with device out of device's own pocket. So device literally paid himself to go, like he paid Astralis to let him go for a team that he may never have wanted to be on to begin with. Absolute madness. Just the craziest turn of events. Like, what was your take on this one?
The reason why it's mad is this, because it was set up like as usual, because when it's bad enough what Astralis is like with PR and what they get their players to say. Then you have Nip, and then you have Nip and Astralis. That's just the most cancer fucking PR nightmare of all time, because they're going to spin it everything the opposite. So it was spun that this was brilliant because Device was joining Nip to make a new era and help them win majors. He was going over there to elevate his career, if anything, even more than Astralis. You'd assume because he was going there that it was because he wanted to win and be a champion. Turns out that wasn't the case. And finally, you would also think of all the things, bearing in mind, Device could go anywhere he wants. He could go to G2, FaZe, Team Liquid.
Yeah, whatever,
he could go to anywhere that wants to speak English and wants a world-class, amazing, still in their prime player. Remember, he was the only player left in Astralis who was still really good and who still really showed a world-class level. So what you would hope is this, Semmler, that he actually did take a cue from the Ronaldos of the world and what happens in modern day sports, which is when you can go anywhere. You don't just pick the team you want. You also pick one where they just pay you, mate. They give you like a signing bonus of like millions in football. If his Device could have done that, instead, he paid for that. Like, this is what's mad. This is a mad joke because it's going to relate. Unfortunately, they're not really big in CSGO, but in League of Legends and Valorant, the best team from Brazil is a team called Loud Gaming. They won the Valorant World Championship, and they even got like an upset over some team, I think it was Fnatic or something, in like the play-ins at Worlds in League of Legends, right? The reason why, I'll tell you the joke in a second, right? The reason Device should actually have joined Loud Gaming instead of Nip is because he took 3 L's back to back to back. He took one in his personal life. We don't need to get into it. You all can guess what it is. He took one in the results because the team was never as good as Astralis used to be. And then thirdly, he took one financially. Now, the reason that joke works is, and I picked Loud Gaming, is because their actual gamer tag when you shorten it in the game is LLL. So he took 3 L's back to back, didn't he? Like, that's the ridiculous thing about this guy. So this could not have backfired any more as a deal at this point in time. Remember, it's not even that he just went there, paid the buyout, got to a worse team. They didn't have a proper IGL. They ended up having a scenario where they got ESA tag in, so then they don't speak fully fluent Swedish. Then they don't do the results they want, and they don't go top 4 at the major and all the rest of it. It's worse than that. Then it gets parlayed into, because of the stress of all this, and then certain other things going on in his life, he then has like almost a year off the game. By the way, here's what that's resulted in. He lost his record in qualifying for majors. He didn't get to be a top 10 player ever, like in HLTV like he had. He has to give it up again for another year. Right? These are records, by the way, Device could have owned forever. Even people like Simple can't necessarily match that because there's still more years. He could have had like these records. You know the way Dupree has that record now, the only one to make it all the majors. That would have easily been Device. It could have even potentially been Olaf Meister if he didn't retire. Like, these guys gave up those records. So like, I actually, at this point, it is like some Shakespearean tragedy, some love, like hubris and what you think you can do and how powerful you think you are as an individual. But this is what the world will chew you up and spit you out, mate. Like, this guy has ruined every aspect of his life and his career right now. And so hopefully he goes back to Astralis and picks up the pieces. Oh, what's that? Astralis has their own beef on the side where they're having to fucking fire people, including one of the best players in the team. It's like, it never ends for Device, does it? This saga is so fucking brutal, mate.
Okay, so that's going to segue us nicely into the Astralis side of things here. So we had the Device side, you know, as far as that story of him when he went from Astralis to NIP. Now, reportedly, he's trying to get back onto this Astralis side of things, where it was reported that there was an agreement in terms of buyout fee, and now they're just trying to haggle over the details. But it's not signed yet. It's not official yet. The Device is on Astralis. That's not been sealed. So we're as far as we're concerned, that's where we stand on the Device side of things. Now, what recently happened is that Config got in an altercation. We talked about this last time, where he got in an altercation outside of a club, and after losing Pro League, results went really poorly for him. He decides to go blow off some steam and decides to go to a club. Apparently, and so he's released his side of the story recently, and that's where it's been getting quite a bit of discussion. I believe you did a video on it recently as well. I haven't had time to listen to it just yet, but there's this whole side of it where it didn't have to be this way. Like he himself, it seems like he himself realizes in his own telling of the story, and we'll obviously include the tweet in case you missed it. We'll include that in the description so you can go read it for yourself, because it's quite the twit longer. But it's a 2-part saga where there was one altercation and then there was another altercation where the details are still fuzzy in terms of how things got so completely out of hand that he ended up with a shattered ankle to the point where he can't even stand on it. And it results in him getting yeeted off of the team. He is no longer on Astralis, mutual agreement, and Astralis have removed him from the roster. Now, the way to tie this back to Device actually is could this be because Astralis are so broke, or at least so it just looks so brutal right now for the organization? They don't have anything going for them. They're not going to get the sticker money from the majors. Their share price is just on a complete downward spiral. So I can't really see these guys floating a lot of cash right now in the bank. Could you see a world in which, in order to make the Device move happen from NIP, they are actually sacrificing Config on the altar of Device in order to have that money for the salary?
Since they said that, like, mutual agreement, they've cancelled his contract. By the way, you don't do that. If anything, you keep people in contract prison. You go, sorry, Alex, you're on the bench for Fnatic now until someone wants to buy you. And if no one does, tough shit, I'm not letting you go. Normally you do that. Well, the problem with doing that is, one, I don't think anyone's going to buy Config out because of how scandalous this particular drama is that we'll get into in a minute. Two, there's also the world where you have to consider, you still got to, in countries like Denmark, you're going to have to pay them still. You can't just pay them full call. You probably even have have to pay him. Maybe I've even heard Denmark might even be like full salary. So in that case, Semmler, literally, I could imagine part of the deal of cancelling it, why Config agreed, is he probably got some payoff, some severance, like, right, here's 3 months salary. But I imagine in doing so, maybe there was more salary to be paid. Maybe, I don't know how many months this contract was for. As you say, maybe this freed up like 100k extra, which suddenly, remember that deal that they're arguing over? Now you've got the 100k extra to make up the difference, or to get to a close enough number that Nip's going to say yes and go, yeah, well, fuck it, fair enough, close enough. And then also, there's the world where you don't want to wait forever on the buyouts and then wonder what's happening and then wouldn't have to bring this guy back in. It's also implied to me that the way the Config drama was handled, because here's the thing, I can't say much about it, it's not my story to tell, but basically I've heard even when he's in Astralis, he's had scenarios not dissimilar to this before Semmler. And if you've ever seen him, you've seen him after buy. He's the sort of guy who gets too drunk and be a bit argy and be a bit of an arsehole and maybe be a bit fucking up and about in the arena, whatever. So that doesn't surprise me at all. So I imagine he was just a PR nightmare for Astralis. Remember, Astralis is going the route of trying to seem squeaky clean and associate with politicians. And like I said about the Blast 4 finals, they want it to be like dads and kids who are the fans of Astralis. That's a sports crowd. If you don't know, in English football, what changed is it used to just be like thugs and fucking young men who were angry, who were all the supporters. There's loads of dads and kids go to those games now. That's why they had to increase security and change, like, kick people out if they were too rowdy, etc. That's the vibe they want in Denmark for esports events. They don't want some guy getting in the fights to the death with fucking street promoters and with a club promoter in the streets of a foreign country, and then potentially like fucking missing weeks and weeks and weeks, and then you find out it was partially his fault. Because my problem with that story, you alluded to it, was this is where you can tell Config isn't the smartest guy, because he thought, I can tell, like a naive little kid, if I just tell the truth, it'll all be okay. And what he didn't realize is that isn't esports. Carlos found this out. Esports isn't about the truth. Esports is about optics and how people perceive things to be. And it doesn't matter if that's a total lie. If it's perceived that way, these companies will align with that over the truth any day of the week, because they're all about making money. So in this particular case, Config fucked up so hard in that fucking twit longer in this part, Semmler, right? Remember, even Jackson's report was he got into a fight and the guy spat in his face and they had a fight, right? When he himself tells the story, he tells the story like this: the guy spat in my face, kicked me, and then went off, right? That's where it ends for anyone else. For anyone else. I know all the guys in YouTube comments and on Twitch, no, well, what I would have done is I would have cracked him. And you wouldn't have done shit. You would be the coward on the bus who watches that woman get fucked up by some guy from another country. That's who you would be. And in your mind, you'd be going, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening in real life. I hope he doesn't come after me next. And you'd all sit there all scared like that. And you wouldn't be the hero. You wouldn't jump forwards like Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. You wouldn't do any of that shit. So what happened is, Config had about 4 chances to get out of the fucking dodge with just a kicked face and some spit. And you know what? If that happens, Astralis never even finds out what happens. In that case, he doesn't have a broken ankle. In that case, he's still in the team. He probably qualifies through the RMR. He's at the major right now, and there's a chance to turn it all around, no matter what past problems he's had. There's even a chance to play with Device now. Now he can even get in a better squad. But in that twit longer, remember, not only does the guy leave, the guy who eventually beats him up, then Config sits outside. My dude, why haven't you gone home yet? I'll tell you why. Because I imagine you were pissed drunk. I imagine you were in a bad mood because you're pissed drunk and you went out of Pro League that day in a really close game against Heroic, your main rivals, and you're sitting there going, this fucking sucks, and how dare that guy do that to me? And then you see that guy come out, and any normal person, by the way, goes, fuck, it's that guy, and runs. No, you go, I'm not going to let that guy fucking punk me. And you run after him, and you found out, you know what? Config's one of those guys like Blame F who works out in the gym a lot. Have you seen he's got a really good physique, hasn't he? He's got fucking macho arms. He's got really big muscles. He's got those sick fucking sleeve tattoos. He looks like a hard man, right? Problem is he looks like it. You know, I've said this in the past. It actually got me in trouble once, but you know what? I'm such a G, I fucking styled it out. You know when I once made this joke on By the Numbers in like 2015, where I said everyone keeps going on about Freakazoid because he's so big and hench from the gym. I said that's not even the way fighting works. Like, you can build your muscles up all you want, mate. If you get hit on that nerve under here, under your chin, you go out. It doesn't matter how big your muscles are. That puts you the night-night switch. That's the snooze button, motherfucker. If I hit you there, it's game over. So that scenario, you can imagine he was getting a bit upset about that, thinking I was saying I was going to knock him out or whatever. But what I'd say is this. Most of these pro players, you can tell when they're not from reality. Because they think, I'm a big guy in the game. in the game. We're in real life now, mate. Then they go, I'm a famous person. You can't treat me like that. By the way, even famous people, sometimes in like high-class clubs in London or Paris, get kicked out or told you're an arsehole or can you please leave, sir, you know, or the police called on you. That does happen. And then finally, if you don't know how to fight, no, I'm not talking you've never had a fight. Maybe you've had some scuffles. Maybe at school you had a few. Maybe you've even beaten a guy up in a bar. If you've never fought someone who knows how to fight, you are helpless. You are like a guy who's never played competitive 5v5 CS and has only been playing on pub servers against randoms. You think you're good at the game, but if I drop you in even a low-level amateur match among people who know how to play 5v5 Counter-Strike, they'll tear you up, they'll know all the angles, they'll know how to use utility, and you won't have a chance. So the sad thing about these young guys is they think it's a movie and they're going to win this fight. This guy is a club promoter on a fucking tiny island like Malta, which has connections previously to like Italy, potentially the mafia and the mob, and you're going to physically beat that guy up while drunk. And after he's already, by the way, this is a really dangerous sign, he's given you a chance to leave. He's kicked you in your face like you're nothing, and then, you know what? I'll leave. I actually don't want to beat you to death and have to go to prison. I think I'll leave. He's gone, and you're running after this guy to fight him. It's like, dude, at this point, you basically bowed to him and said, please beat the shit out of me. And he did. And as you see in that story, it's terrifying, isn't it? In the story, he's trying to crawl away on a broken leg that he can't. That's the consequences of violence when you don't know real violence. That's the difference between a Marvel movie where Black Widow's spinning and kicking all these guys in the face and real life, where if you've ever seen any of those videos where a mob of people attack one person, even if the one person gets a couple of nice punches off, they swarm them, they hold you down, they beat you for as long as they want. At that moment, by the way, there's a great line they used to say in the UFC. It's one of the best trash talk you can ever do, which is, if I'm someone who, let's say we had a UFC fight, Semmler, and I win by submission, I can now say to you for real, if that referee wasn't there, I would have killed you. I would have kept your choke until you died, your brain damage, or I would have snapped your arm in half, and there's no tap. In real life, I don't have to let go when you tap. That's what real life violence is like. You also, by the way, you can choose to get into real life violence. You can't choose when it ends. The person who's stronger, this is how the world works, they choose when it ends. And if they're fucking some evil, malicious guy, this could have gone worse for this guy. There's a world, by the way, this is one thing people didn't even think about. Since this guy's connected within Malta, there's a world where you try to fight him, and suddenly his 3 henchmen step out of the shadows, and they just hold you and beat you the ever-living fuck out of you. And if you think Config was depressed over this story, that's the shit that traumatizes you forever. That'll break you psychologically, mate. That's the shit you might never come back from. So I think this whole story, yeah, I feel for Config when I'm reading that story. I do think, oh, he's made bad decisions. But it's like, mate, if I'm Astralis, as much as I think Astralis is doing suicide on the team, I don't blame him for kicking him. Why wouldn't you? In this scenario, by the way, I'm also thinking, if I'm Astralis, think what I said earlier. So I would never find out you did all this shit unless you broke your leg and weren't able to fly. Like, mate, you can't be in my team anymore. I'm sorry, you can't. Like, even though I said all these other teams could pick Config up, what I mean by that is, don't worry, you better do your due diligence. Before you pick him up, you're going to have exhaustive interviews with him and people in his family circle where they explain to you that he's had counselling, that he has changed, that he's actually been able to stop drinking, that he can go out to a bar and have one drink and have a cool time. And not. If you can't do that, you are not going to be a professional Counter-Strike player. Because I really thought, like, I know people thought because he was very open and very vulnerable in this twit longer, like, well, that's fine then. It's okay that. No, it isn't. There still has to be a lot of work done on Config's side, because I actually thought, like I said, the angle where he basically admitted that he himself reinserted himself in this narrative, that's such a blunder. That isn't how you're all reading it. Like, it's just what happened next. No, he had all these chances to walk away. It's like I always tell people in my Discord, if someone ever is going to try and fight you, you run away. Even if they make you fight them, you punch them once, down them, and run away. You never stay fighting. You should know some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mate. The first thing you find out in your first ever lessons of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is anyone with skills doesn't beat you. They dominate you. You can't do anything against them. You feel like a little child with like your uncle fucking fighting you.
No, that literally happened today in class, where it was a guy like my height, my build, all of that, but like it was his 3rd class, and like we get to the part where you do like specifics, where you've done some drills, and now you're gonna kind of like, you know, up the intensity a little bit, so you're trying to apply the drills in actual like in a little bit more with a little bit more intensity, and it's just like, dude, you could see the cogs turning where like I'm literally just doing whatever I want with him, and it's like he's realizing like, oh, like that's the gap. It's not a Hollywood movie where like, oh, I can tough it out and fight and be like savage and like I see red and all that sort of shit. It's like no, like this guy is in full control and there's literally nothing I can do. And like you could just see the cogs. And it was just like, yeah, because I literally had that same experience. Like I know how that feels because that's how I felt the first time I came on the mat and I got ragdolled around and it was like, oh, that's what it could be. And this is in a controlled environment, in a nice mats on the floor, like there's rules, like you say, you can tap and it stops, like all of that, those agreements. Now take that outside where it's not mats, it's concrete. You hit concrete the wrong way, you shatter bones, you can die. So already you up the stakes there. And then, yeah, like you say, if the guy doesn't have any mercy, who knows where it goes.
I'll give you another angle. Probably the most underrated angle is the thing that everyone in the UFC comments negatively on because they've never done any sport. When everyone goes, I fucking can't believe Conor McGregor gassed out in round 3. Right? That means he was fighting for like 10 plus minutes constantly with a man trying to kill him. Like, you don't understand what stamina is, guys. Again, Config's in the gym. I am working on my biceps. Biceps won't help you in a fight, mate. Cardio will fucking help you. If you don't have cardio, then you go in and throw those punches, you gas out in like 30 seconds, mate. You're thinking when after 30 seconds, I'm like making fun of your shit in bed. For real, if you could last a minute of continuous fighting, you're actually in shape. Like, it's from jiu-jitsu. Sparring sessions are very short, guys. But when you fight people better than you do 2 of them and you're like, I'd like to go home now. I am fucking wrecked. I'm at my limit. And I only fought for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of 2 different people and I'm just done. Now imagine you're in the middle of a scrap in real life. Again, where like I said, if this guy's a club promoter, he'll have seen violence. He's probably involved with violence. He probably has to beat people like this up on occasion. So that guy is just like, he's like a fucking black belt compared to you, mate. You're not going to make it.
Tragic thing about this config thing as well is that like you don't even want to go there, but you do. Now you wonder like, well, did he break his wrist slipping in the airport or did he break his wrist in another way? It's like
that didn't sound like a plausible story. That's all I'm going to say. That story, like I was in an airport, that sounds like you were pissed drunk in the night before the airport, but no one saw you ready, Semmler, till you were at the airport and you figured out a story like, oh, you won't believe it. That trolley. Because as Richard said, Richard did a great stream on
there
this.
Was nobody, there was nobody around who could say otherwise.
Richard did a great stream on this where he made the point. Richard used to literally play like amateur rugby, a sport where you like charge people with your fucking neck and no shoulder pads to fuck them up, right? And in that sport, Richard's broke his nose. He hasn't broken his arms and his fucking wrists. And he's just, like, this guy twice has managed this. You're right, basically. If I know what I know about config, I just get the vibe that, I don't believe it. There's a story, similar one back in 1.6, I won't say the player, where he came to the event and he claimed like, oh, yeah, I accidentally tripped when I was playing football and broke my fist. Then one of his teammates just told me later, no, he was having a fight with someone. He got angry and punched a window.
There you go. Yeah. That about sums it up.
And also, remember this. Oh, I didn't even think of this angle. And this is even worse. When he said about Jackson, these guys tried to contact me, even though it was mostly BS. Which part was BS?
Yeah, exactly. Which part was BS? Mostly. It's just...
As far as I can tell, you admitted it all. Which part was BS? So what that means is as well, config, your credibility shot, mate. Not only might you've lied about these past scenarios, but when you got caught with the hand in the cookie jar, you were like, wasn't me. I didn't do it.
That wasn't my hand.
Ridiculous, isn't it? I know.
No, that's that mostly in that tweet. That mostly was just like, wait, what? Why did you put mostly in there? That is, you either go all in and so say it's bullshit, or you don't. But to do the mostly, man, alarm bells are ringing, and you're just like, oh, fuck, like this is. But then again, second language. English is a second language for him or a third language. So you're just making. There's room for error there that you can ill afford to make those kinds of errors in that situation. So, well, I mean, as far as config is concerned, I mean, hopefully, obviously hoping for a full recovery. It's not like we want the worst for this guy. We want the best for this guy. It just sucks to see how this is all playing out. And real life is not like a fucking movie or a series. You watch Marvel, you think, oh, invincible. You get punched and you just hop right back up again or whatever. It's like, nah, guys. It can get bad really fucking fast, which is why you fucking run if there's a fight sort of situation. You just get the fuck out. So that being said, the Astralis saga doesn't end there. So they do take out config from the active roster agreement, whatever, in terms of like setting things up for device, possibly. But config wasn't the only one to get put on that bench. They decide to change up the coaching status as well. Now, excuse me, Trace was released as a coach, so already, and it sounds like they're going to give the bump. They're going to give the step up from their academy team coach to the main roster. Okay, fair enough. But I think your tweet summed it up really nicely. I think you had a banger tweet on the topic, and I really liked it. So I went back and found it for the sake of the show notes because, you summed it up here. I'll read the tweets out for you guys. Okay, so how the fuck? So this is in regards to how Trace is making his announcement that he was benched due to poor results and especially missing the major. And so, yada, yada, yada. Thorin comes out. How the fuck is he supposed to qualify for the major with that lineup? It's a miracle he got he got the real lineup to top 4 at IEM Cologne, one of the 4 biggest events of the year. But then you have the follow-up tweet, which I fucking love. When does Casper Fit, I don't know how to say his name, Fit, get fired for bad results? On his watch, he burned the greatest lineup in history to a crisp to the extent that the 3 best players and the coach went to play in teams from other countries. Where's the accountability for that bum? I mean, that's the takeaway. It's like you go for the obvious, like it's always the coach that gets the axe. It's always the coach, and you're just like, the players, the coach, but what about the management? What about the guys who are making the calls as to the roster and as to what the structure looks like around the team? Why are those guys not catching any flack and they're able to just kind of keep sailing through this? What's that about? And so I really liked that you actually managed to point that out a bit and maybe poke a finger in their eye.
Here's the thing. They didn't even do Trace the fucking courtesy, Semmler, in the statement of being like, it was nothing to do with results. We just had a different vision on the direction thing. They directly said it's because of bad results. So then the question has to become, what expectations did you have? Because remember, by the way, as far as I know, Casper Vid was the one who signed Config. So he brought a guy in who turned out to be a troublemaker and fucked Trace completely by being busted up to not be available to play at a qualifier, which then caused Trace doesn't win with like a dog shit line that was really bad. He now gets fired and loses his job. How does that make sense? What the fuck is the accountability there? Like, at what point does Casper Vid have to pay the piper for the last 2 years of Counter-Strike and what he's done with that squad and the lack of players that were good? By the way, you do know Bubsky, them not playing him is one of the stupidest moves of all time. He should have been playing instead of the lucky guy, whether they can AWP or not. He should have been in the lineup maybe instead of Zipnix, whether Zipnix is a legend and being paid or not. These are the real decisions a GM makes. Hard decisions. Like, you have to let a legend go. You have to work without an AWPer. That's actually real GMing. This guy wants it on easy mode. If you don't do well, the joke is, for his failures, he fires you, a player. He fires you, a coach. He goes, sorry, Config, it's been real, bro. See ya. And then lets him go after they're saying he's part of their family. They let the guy just go, oh, you're at your lowest point. You just did a tweet longer where you said genuinely you have an extremely dark thoughts. You were crying every night. You have night terrors about this. You were literally paranoid you wouldn't get to go back to Denmark because you thought you might have like a thing explode in your eye if you went on a plane. Oh, is my family going through all that? Yeah, come into my office on Monday morning. I need to talk to you about something. You're fired. Like, this isn't how you treat family, mate. Maybe he treats his family that way. I could imagine so. He seems like a fucking arsehole, by the way. He's one of those people where, like, homie, just don't ever meet me in real life. It won't be a great conversation. And I won't be the guy who's polite to you. Let's just put it that way, mate. I'll tell you a few choice things to your motherfucking face, mate. Not Config style. Don't worry about that. We don't need to go to that level. So the thing I hate about this is, look at what Trace actually did. So he joined their team in something like, he officially became the coach on March 4th, right? Here's what he did after that. He managed to get them top 8 in Pro League Season 15. By the way, top 8, that's a playoff spot. So, okay, that's pretty good for a lineup that has Farleans, all super flawed. Zipnix is shit. Glaive hasn't been on his game. Then they qualify for the major. Brilliant. They managed to finish second in the European Showdown. They didn't beat Ents, but Ents at the time was the team with Spinks. They managed to come second. That's pretty good. Again, that's about the best you could hope for in the Blast Showdown. Then they go to the major. Okay, they only finished 17th to 19th. It's not the end of the world. They're not that great a lineup, just had a bad performance. Then they go to the Pinnacle Cup Championship. I talked about this before. It was a LAN that featured big and heroic. They come second. That's pretty good, actually. Not bad, right? It's not what Astralis expects. This isn't an Astralis quality lineup, though, is it? It's not run by someone who knows what he's doing in Astralis. Then you go to the Rubek Cup online competition. You lose to FaZe, the best team in the world. Then you go to IEM Cologne. You make top 4 at probably what's going to end up being the 3rd best event of 2022. You finish top 4. Now, by the way, do you ever get any credit for these results? I never heard anyone say, wow, what a great job to Trace, getting us these performances. Then you go back home and in the last 4 groups, you don't qualify because in your last match, you play FaceClan, the best team in the world. Then you go to Pro League. Yeah, I'll give you that one. You bombed it. You were close to winning some games, but you didn't make it. So you had one bad performance. Then you lose config. You don't get through the RMR and you're fired. What was he supposed to do with this lineup? Was he supposed to just straight up win IM Cologne? Was he supposed to go top 8 at the major just automatically because the name Astralis is on the jersey? This idiot in Casper Vid is like one of those guys who, I don't know if you know this saying, but when you join a legendary franchise, Semmler, what you say if you're a star player to show it's not about your ego is you say, it ain't about the name on the back of the jersey, man. It's about the name on the front. Because what you mean is like the org matters. Casper Vid probably thinks that's real. He thinks that the name on the back of the jersey, like washed up Zipniks, Farley. He thinks that doesn't matter. If you have Astralis written on, you're just supposed to be the best. No, it doesn't work that way. In this game, I always say this, Counter-Strike is like football. You could be the best defensive team ever in football. You have to score goals to win games. So you have to be able to score goals. You can be the best team ever at every aspect in Counter-Strike. You could coach them perfectly, motivation, nutrition. If you can't kill people in the game, you can't win certain games. So you have to give him players good enough to do it. So all I'll say is, you look at that track record I just ran down there. I think he overperformed with this lineup. The joke is, if I'm some of the other teams out there in the world, by the way, if I'm even a team like Heroic, something like that, I might actually be calling Trace up, going, you know what, maybe you know what you're doing. You actually seem like you got the best out of some of these guys. You found angles to get placings I never thought you were capable of. So instead, Astralis, as usual, if anyone shows any kind of potential, they have to fire you. So great job, Casper Vid, or Casper Shit, as we call him on this show. It's not a great name. It's just he is shit.
It's just the way it is. Richard Lewis, reference in here in spirit.
Exactly.
There you go. There you go. It is just a tragic turn of events for Trace. But I mean, it feels like, Astralis have that kind of track record where they don't really seem to have their priorities straight. But it is in free fall like that. We kind of looked at it this morning again just to take a look, and it's like it is still in free fall. That org, as far as the value is concerned, I don't know what they're going to do in terms of money. So they're probably freaking out right now, because without that RMR, I could see them just burning everything down to the ground at this point. Because how do you keep the doors open going forward when your share price has gone off a cliff and everything? And I mean, you're not going to get the sticker money. You're not going to get any of that sort of play. I mean, really, really makes you wonder. I mean, they're still like, you can emphasize that as well, because they are trying to make roster changes. Apparently, according to Jackson, again, Jackson, we're just going to Jackson. Shout out, guys. You guys don't sleep over there. But excuse me. So they've decided to try and get Farley off of the roster and have offered him in a trade deal for Stair from Sprout. So it's not about like money or anything. They're literally just like, yeah, we want Stair, but can we just give you Farley? We're a little tight on cash right now. Can you do a 1-for-1? Like,
are you ready for the joke? A lot of people won't know this. This is going to really blow your mind. So you're ready for 2 details. So 1, Stair isn't an AWPer. 2, the actual player that was looking all right when he secondary AWP'd was Config. Casper Vid doesn't know what he's doing, mate. He's a fucking moron. The guy has no clue whatsoever. He's just an imbecile.
It's what you get. I guess you're just. The theory I've heard, dude, just makes the most sense. Has got to be that they're trying to free up budget. They get rid of Config. He can't be cheap. It has to be that. Like, this has to be the plays that you're making when you're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, I don't think
it has
to
be
money.
that. It's tragic, though. It really is tragic to see how this is going for such a storied org. But right now, at least as far as they're concerned, I mean, it's looking like Device may be in the books, where it's looking like that may be the play. But it also looks like, they're just trying to make some moves here. And so Farley offered in a trade deal for Stair. Going back and forth on that one, and we'll see how that develops, if anything comes from it or not. Feels like
here we go.
Sprout should just kind of tell him to go get stuffed and keep developing the roster. But what do you think?
Because here's the problem: if they will offer some money, and that is what the business Sprout is in. Sprout is a Copenhagen Flames. They sell players. What they do is they recruit players and they sell. By the way, in the same way as Vorberg,
they're offering a trade. It's not a sell. And what are you going to do?
Because Farley would actually be good for their team, mate.
Sorry, go ahead.
Farley would be a really good player on Sprout. I guarantee if he goes to that team, he'll start fragging out. He'll be used properly. They'll play around him. He's actually an aggressive AWPer. He got way less aggressive than Astralis. What?
Who do you sell Farley to?
No, they would want him in their lineup. The Steer guy hasn't done anything yet. He's a young player. Farley will be good tomorrow in Sprout. That's a fine trade. And also in this scenario, like, he would want to go to Astralis, wouldn't he? The other thing about the small orgs is they're not very ruthless. He wants to go to Astralis because he's brainwashed. Like, everyone's got Copenhagen syndrome, like every fucking idiot in the scene. So yeah, I don't think that's even a surprise on that one. What I think is this though. Well, I actually think the maddest part. Oh, fuck! I've lost what I was going to say there. Let me think.
As part of the Farley Gastayer trade potential between Astralis and Sprout. Device, how he fits in, config taken out.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Who cares anymore?
Who cares anymore? I mean, we are just going to be on the sidelines watching. I get your point. I get your point in terms of like Farley's individual performance. I'm just wondering, like, down the line, like who are you selling Farley to? Unless he does have some kind of like insane overperformance. I mean, are you holding on to Farley in order to get him onto heroic down the line? Are you getting like trying to go international with him? Like, what's your play if you're Sprout if you take that deal? Because Stair,
use him in your team.
Develop him further. Sorry, go ahead.
You just use him in your team.
You just use him in your team.
He's a better player than most of the Sprout players, mate. People forget when this guy was on FPX and Godson, he was pretty good. Like, there's a reason why when he got picked up, look, it was mainly because Lucky was shit. But all of us thought, like, hey, he could be all right. I think he's been way worse in Astralis than he was in those teams, mate. Like, it's why I suspect, like I say, I don't think they used him well. I think they quickly were very cynical. I'm like, actually, we don't really fuck with this guy. I don't even think the players ask for these guys. So as a result, I think he was misused. The Steer guy at least will be better. I do think it fucks him in terms of ARPing.
If they're asking for him, yeah, it would be interesting here. 23 years old still for Farley. So, I mean, he is still got some room to go. All right, fair enough. It's something to keep an eye on, but it's probably a good point. So that about sums up what's been going on with Astralis, at least lately. I mean, obviously, it feels like this is really just a recurring thread that we're going to keep touching on the show. Just keeping on top of this Astralis situation as it develops. They're going to have some room to move now that the RMR is underway. Once the RMR is over, then they can start really making some moves, but we'll see. But yeah, let's go ahead and get some questions in before we call it a show. We changed the logo. Man, that's okay. All right, we're in. So the way that you get in on this, guys, if you're interested, be sure to check !Discord in the chat. That'll give you access to the Discord, or if you're watching elsewhere, you can hop into the Discord link. And in the Discord link, it's the GROGcoin channel. The GROGcoin Lounge will give you the information on how to hold GROGcoin. That supports the show. And it also, if you hold a certain number of them, you can ask questions each show. So at the end of the show, we got some of these questions, and so we'll hop into those now. Blaz, do you think ESL will ever implement a pay-per-view model for their events? What would need to happen for them to do it? They could actually do it now if they because they pretty much have a monopoly. The only thing that has really stopped anybody from doing it in CS:GO is that there was no monopoly on the tier 1 teams. But if you hold a monopoly on the tier 1 teams, you could legitimately try to at least test a pay-per-view model with one of your events now. If you're ESL, because you actually, this could probably be the best chance that you've had in Counter-Strike to date to try and do a pay-per-view, or at least charge something, maybe a subscription model. Like, you could try and actually do that now with just how much of the market ESL have. I think that's it, because before, what would happen is that why would you pay money to watch Liquid or somebody play, FaZe, Na'Vi play, when next week they're playing at your competitor's tournament, and then the week after that they're going to play in another tournament, and the week after that. Whereas now, if you can only watch them play this month in Pro League, well, then maybe you can have like a $5 paywall on Pro League or something like that, and see what happens. Maybe it is actually possible. What do you think about this one?
I mean, I actually think on some level, pay-per-view is an absolute necessity for esports, because when I watch any of the sports I follow, the UFC, NFL, I pay for the pass. I get all the games online. By the way, they fucked themselves by giving everyone years and years and years of not just free live streams, free VODs too. Not even the VODs cost money. You don't even get many views off the fucking VODs. You don't even really get much sponsor action off the VODs. Logically, you should always have been paying to access the VODs. I would literally have paid to access the ESL VODs VODs to go back and watch old games and check up on matches I didn't see live. So the problem, I think, is this. Logically, you've got to have pay-per-view eventually. The real solution is probably akin to GSL, a freemium model where there's like a shitty low-quality stream, or there's a stream like we used to have on E-League where you don't get the casters and the desk. And whatever it is, you need to have exclusive elements like VODs, like high quality, etc. Maybe extra features like a light post-game show that's just for people on the fucking high quality one. Maybe you do that, or you have multiple streams and there's a shitty cheap stream that shows on the normal game, but if you want Chad and fucking Sadakist, you got to pay for the top stream. You got to do something like that. Now, it's true, it's going to be really hard because you've established for years and years and years that they get it for free. And you've even been stupid enough to thank fans as if they were making you money, not letting you lose money as a company for your parent company. So you've even set the precedent that they do feel entitled. In fact, they think what you're currently giving them for free isn't enough. They want more. They want Blast. They want, hey, I want what Blast has. You mean Blast, the ones who are bleeding out of their arse with fucking money and desperately trying to get any deal with shady Middle Eastern people they can possibly wrangle. That isn't a company in awesome health, guys. That's someone where the whole reason they have to have amazing production is it's the only thing they have over ESL. It's their one angle. So they have to pay for more producers, more expensive equipment, more on-site stuff. They have to do all that. Whereas ESL's gone the other route. ESL's production's gotten worse because now it's remote and kind of it's here. Now the players are here and the casters are here and the talent's here and there's this desk here and there's a night desk and it's a different talent pool. They've had to cut costs all over the board. So I think the reason you have to do it is because it's the only way esports has a future without just taking evil money, which obviously ESL doesn't care about. And then finally, I'll add in this other detail. 4 years ago, ESL made a deal for Facebook for exclusivity on certain tournaments. Couldn't be the major, if you remember, but it was like Pro League. And they did famously a daughter event. It was, I can't remember which one it was. It might be like ESL Malaysia or something. And they did an event. You might remember this story. The Dota community, easily the worst fan base in the history of esports, except Brazilians. They basically were so entitled, they had a thread that was like top of their Reddit that said, we should all just mass boycott this event. Don't even watch like restreams of it. Don't watch core streams of it. Boycott the whole thing because ESL needs to pay. And the worst thing is, this is why you can't do pay-per-view, Semmler. Because Valve love Dota and don't give a shit about CSGO, Valve heard, oh, wait, our own fans are upset about the... And they made ESL allow people to like core stream it and stuff. And they cut out all of ESL's leverage with that deal, which, yes, the Facebook stream was bad. But the point is someone has to be the one who pays. And it ain't going to be Twitch because they have the monopoly. So unfortunately, the precedent is sort of set that even though I think it's necessary, I don't think it's going to be tried for a long time, mate. And if it is, I don't think they'll start with the big product. Like you say, they'll do a Pro League season. They'll do an ESL conference or something. They'll do something small and they'll see, does that have any uptake? Whereas the problem is, realistically, as of like 5 years ago, you should have been paying for IM Cologne. You should have been paying for VOD access to 1080p VODs. You should be paying for side content. Like that's, by the way, I think you should. I would like to pay if I thought it got me really good quality stuff. I'd love to. I'm an adult. I've got disposable income.
That's a good point, especially Counter-Strike. I think the average age is definitely in the disposable income bracket. But that isn't that what GSL used to do back in the day, where they had GSL was access to VODs, but also quality.
The quality of the stream. You used to get a really low quality stream if you just got the free one. So logically, loads of people did buy the pass. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is legitimately something you could actually do now, which would be really interesting to do. I don't even think that would be that big of a stretch. I think you could actually try for Pro League, and you just have to be willing to weather the storm, like you say, right? The Reddit people, like you just have to be willing to weather that storm, and when it passes, which it will, then you could actually open new doors for yourselves, but you have to be willing to take the heat for a little bit.
That's the problem, Semmler.
There you go.
When has ESL ever shown long-term thinking? They were always about this event, the next event. I've told you that what used to happen for real is I would go to ESL people and tell them I've got a brilliant idea for something we could do for the next event. And they'd go, look, I can't talk about that now. I've got to worry about this event this weekend. And it was like that for 4 years, Semmler. So sadly, ESL has shown a track record of not having long-term thinking. They just care about tomorrow's numbers.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay. Itzko, what do you find worthy of the word divine? Well, apart from the obvious, God. I just have a meme. It's like a good cheesecake. Divine. But this actually makes me think of something else. This makes me think of when we were talking about art, right? I was listening to a discussion the other day, and the way that they put it was really interesting in that good art, right, is a sermon for the eyes. And I was just like, woo, I like that a lot. Because it was what we were talking about, the via pulchritudinous, right? Where it's just like, this can get you closer as an expression of God's divinity, of God's beauty, right? This can get you closer to linking up with God, right? Beauty. A sermon for the eyes. I was like, oh man, that's so good. That's right on the money. That's right there. So, but the obvious thing, what do you think was worthy of the word divine? I mean, God, and then God's divine created beings would have to be it. That's the way. What do you think?
I mean, to me, it's obvious things like a child's laughter, innocent laughter, when an old man shares a moment of fraternal friendship with a stranger, people giving real acts of charity where they have nothing to gain from it. They won't ever see that person again. They can't trust that this person's even telling the truth, but they give them some food when they don't have much themselves. They give them a room to stay in for the night when the person's weary on the road, etc. These are the things that in those moments, it's like, what else is behind that? There's some sort of special, like extraordinary, like grace that you're granted in those moments that you and here's the key thing. I get why people are asking,
or is it love?
Isn't love divine? Wouldn't that be the most divine quality in the history of human experience?
Love personified, yeah. Okay,
yeah,
fine,
so what I would say is this. The problem in the modern day, I understand why people ask questions like this, is the genius of the world. I'll explain a very key concept to you. You know, in that Four Horsemen episode where everyone was like, and of course that Tate guy is part of a multi-level marketing scheme where he just cons young men, right? One of the most misunderstood things about the money Twitter area is every single area that has legit people who are successful, who do have techniques, who can train you like a coach to be better at something and show you the correct method, because there's something real there, they will be mimicked in the same way as in nature. You will have a creature that isn't dangerous will mimic a more dangerous creature, so it can get away with like making the prey scared of it or making a predator not come after it. So what happens is everything that is real, remember, the devil can't create anything. He can only take what is there and pervert it and warp it and twist it. What happens is when there's something real, it will be surrounded by scammers, con artists, tricksters, people who try to make themselves seem like they're real as well, but actually they're just selling you nonsense. The concept is called a simulacrum. It's something that appears to be a copy of something real, but it's fake, it's artificial, it's not real. By the way, that's the whole way the modern world works, like modern medicine. It's a fake, synthetic version of something that you could use the real one of, but why would I use the real one? I can't patent that and make millions of dollars off it. You'd just be able to go and pick that flower, wouldn't I? In fact, make the flower illegal and make me have the license to make the synthetic fucked up version that then gives you 4 or 5 second order and third order effects that I've got another drug to treat you for. What do you know? No, put away that nightshade, put away those mushrooms, put away that fucking honey. You want my shit, honey TM combo join. Like, anyway, so basically what I would say is this. In that sense, that's why you're all lost. I was lost. So what happens is people trick you into thinking pleasure is happiness. Pleasure is joy. Pleasure is divine. Pleasure in the sense that the world offers it is always degrading. Pleasure takes from you. It hollows you out. It drains you. It leaves you feeling like, oh, fuck, I need more pleasure quickly to soothe my mind. That's not enough. Real pleasure uplifts you, lasts for hours. You can be buzzing for days when you've met someone, had an awesome few days with them, great conversation, uplifting stuff, charity, all the, so what I would say is in the modern day, the whole world is based around commodified simulacrums of pleasure and joy and these things. So the problem is, if you actually get rid of all that, remove the signal noise, detox from all the fucking media and all the drugs that you're taking, the fucking caffeine, detox from all of it, then when you start to interact again and you come across something like Semmer's talking about, something divine, you won't even need to be told. You will know it in an instant. It will be so radically different from what you experienced in normal life without the drugs and the simulacrum that you cannot miss it. So I'll give you an example. One of the reasons why people go like a tourist to a cathedral or like a fucking parish and they see the stained glass window, they go, that is beautiful. No, that's some fucking whack hallmark version of saying what happens. If you were a peasant 300 years ago, you've never heard music except from a church organ. You've never seen light change colours and illuminate something. The devil didn't have the TV box back then, mate. You've never seen that except in a church. So of course it's the most thing. Imagine being a peasant, seeing the Sistine Chapel ceiling. You wouldn't even know an artist created that. You'd just assume it was God. You know, when you hear those stories about those primitive tribes and they take psychedelics and they have weird visions, they don't even know what psychedelics are. So when they take that, they really think, when I take this thing, God literally speaks to my mind and I know the universe and the secrets. That is basically what you would feel like if you hadn't had all this shit pushed in front of you. So basically, you have to do a bit of hard work, but you can answer that question yourself, mate. I'd even say answering that question is the journey of a lifetime.
There you go. Yeah, that's about summing it up right there. There it is, yeah. At the end of it all. Oh, good one, man. Banger. Okay, architect to Korean esports based Joe. How would you make Battle Royale into a watchable esports?
Stop asking that fucking question, because notice how none of you have any answers. I'm just supposed to, like, how do you make this dog shit taste like delicious Swiss chocolate? Don't know, it seems impossible to me. But how would you do it? I don't know. You know what? I'll just be straight up. I don't care about Battle Royale. I think it's a shit game. I've never played it except for like some PUBG and the odd Fortnite once or twice. I think it's a garbage format. I think the people who play it are morons. It is intentionally a silly pub mode, and you want it to be pro esports, where you don't get what you want in life. Do you have any actual answers? You played the game PUBG a bit, right? Do you have any ways that you would make it pro?
I mean, the only way to make it pro is to increase the action. Because what kills it is that you just get people camping all the time. And that does not make for entertainment and entertaining gameplay, because you don't even have necessarily, like, if they're camping, but they're not developing the situation as in like getting more gear or whatever. If they're just literally just sitting there, there's only so much you can do at that point. And then it's arbitrary in terms of like where the circle goes and like who has to move and whatever. So you have to somehow just increase the amount of action in the game so that it can either speed the game up and just create more conflict so that skill can shine, I guess, right? So that you can get the more head-to-head conflict, and hopefully the more skilled opponent emerges. Or yeah, I haven't put much thought into it though, to be fair. That is definitely there, but I think that is probably the main thing holding that esports back. I think it's definitely one, like, it's only as popular as it is because in the Middle East, India, that whole area, right? It's a gigantic mobile game, and so it's just a humongous industry in terms of the mobile game market. And so they literally just put the money into the esport because they have so much money, and it's just a form of marketing appealing to people who play the game. But how to make it more watchable? You have to find a way to make to increase action. It's just shrink the circles faster. I don't know. That's the answer. Snake Gold. What life philosophy do you hate?
Atheism seems like an obvious one, right?
Atheism is obvious, yeah.
Malthusianism, there's one. The idea there's too many people and we need to kill them off and do eugenics. I'm definitely against that entirely.
Yeah, I mean, it's what globalism can be tied into that as well.
I'll tell you one that's a very unusual one that I definitely hate: humanism.
Yeah,
you know, everyone goes, "What do you mean?"
Anti-human to the core.
It is,
yeah.
Because here's what humanism does. Do you want to know something, guys? You know, all those years where people told you, you better just stay indoors, you can't ever see your family, you can't even go and see your dying mother. That was the logic of humanism. The logic was, if it's for the greater good, whether it is or not, if we declare it's for the greater good, you must individually suffer as much as we say, otherwise you're evil. Like, that isn't good. Like, in life, by the way, you would never privilege all the people in your country over you and your family. You would never go, like, the joke of humanism is that trolley experiment where you go, right, you personally are supposed to pull the lever that makes the trolley go and kill your child so it doesn't kill 5 criminals that you don't know. And they're supposed to go, well, 5 lives, no, 5 criminal lives don't outweigh my child's life. And you don't get to make that decision about my life. So I hate humanism, mate. I think it's portrayed as the most kind, compassionate. It is, like you say, it is anti-human. It actually says like some commie bullshit, because that's where it comes from. from. We're all totally of equal value, no matter what we do in our lives and our relationships. And we should all be treated like literal just numbers for a fucking pencil pusher on a ledger to go actually carry the two. Yeah, just kill 1,000 people. Like,
That's
it's
exactly
fucked up.
it. That's the conclusion. That's where it goes every time. It's just like when you can reduce them. That was actually one of those points that was really interesting of Georgia Maloney, that speech that was going all over the place everywhere, where she was talking about how it is just, you know, reducing you to a number for the financial people to just count, you know, to put you in your column, and you're just going to be reduced to a perfect consumer, you know. And I'm not in, you know, it was just like that. That was one of those points where I was just like, interesting that somebody's saying that, you know, like that is really what it boils down to. That is the future that is being marched towards, is reducing humans to reducing the number of humans in general, and B, reducing them as much as possible to just a consumer class. And
I know what you mean, Semmler, but my problem with that particular topic is, here's the joke. If what she was battling against was Coca-Cola,
I'm not saying
evil,
her.
No, this is the example. If she was battling against Coca-Cola evil, she's Pepsi evil.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm not saying her.
No, I know what you mean.
It's like the concept that she's talking about. I'm like, listen, all politicians are cunts, right? But like, you know, it's just that's definitely, you know, it's like, okay, you're definitely a politician. You're definitely just saying shit to get votes, because your job is to just get votes, and so you'll say whatever is necessary to get votes. That's literally your whole core concept, like just wrapped in. But you are saying something that I think there's definitely something there. Like, I guess I had like a short circuit. You remember like old Simpsons? Did you watch like old Simpsons, where it's like the old Mr. Burns, you know, when he gets sick and the doctor's trying to explain, you know, like, well, you know, it's like all the viruses, you know, it's like all these little stuffed animals, you know, and it's like he's got this doorway and they're all trying to pile in together, you know, and they can't quite get through, you know, and so they're stuck in the door. Like, that was actually what was going on in my brain, where it's just like, what life philosophy do you hate? It's like, which do I not hate? Shit. Like, there's too many. It's all good. It's all over, man. It's all
most
over.
of them are garbage. And part of the reason why is because some of them are just a nerd sitting alone in a room, never exercising his body, never going out into real life, never actually living life, and just going theoretically, academically, in my brain, what is truth and love? Like, that's half of what philosophy is. Just bollocks. It's like modern art.
Yeah.
It's just a load of bollocks, and it's all built on each other, and it's all wanky, self-referential shit. That's why the rare people, like, you know, I'll give you an example of a classic one. You know, everyone says, here's the spoiler, guys. The way you always know someone's straight fire is before you can ever get to read and hear about what they said, you get told a bunch of shit that makes them seem stupid. That's a sign that they're being gate kept away. So here's how you know Nietzsche has some straight fire fucking philosophy. Because everyone who's never read a Nietzsche book ever in their life knows this fact. You've probably heard it too, right? Oh, he just, like, at the end of his life, he was like going mad from wanking, and he sort of loved like the Nazis, and he just went mental and like just sort of like died in shame and poverty. If you go and look, dude, that guy actually was into like physical fitness and stuff, mate. You can go look at this. Like, it's very different from how it was portrayed. And he was a thinker that was trying to have like revolutionary thoughts, and wasn't just trying to sit back and trying to understand what is the vital essence of humanity, etc. Yeah. Those are the people I'm interested in.
Shit, now I'm reaching, because wasn't it his sister or something who was...
His sister basically controlled after his death the PR,
exactly.
and I think maybe even published
the narrative around, around his
exactly.
legacy. Like, that's the thing. And so she kind of besmirched his legacy on that side, because she was very closely tied to the Nazis, if I remember correctly.
It's the same one that they do with Tesla, where they say he went mad and fell in love with a pigeon. If you actually even go and read the shit about the pigeon, it's more like he just saw almost like the divine light of God through the pigeon, because it was an animal that he could interact with, and it wasn't like a human with all the politics. So again, as usual, the devil twists anything before it gets to you. Yeah. Right? Like, they can trick you in any case. And so if they trick you and not looking into it, more fool you.
That's it's an oversimplification, obviously, but or a generalization. But the rule of thumb that I go by now is that it's almost always the opposite of whatever the general narrative is. And so just if you start there, you know, maybe that's not always the case, but like my experience, the vast majority of the time now.
I'll give you a similar one. Are you ready? Here's a great rule for you. You've never heard this before. If there's a documentary and it's widely distributed, it's at the top of YouTube, it's the first thing when you search for it, it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and it's a debunking documentary, there's almost certainly something really important and valuable in that, because why the fuck are they spending that much money promoting that? Because, by the way, that whole angle of like, no, but they don't promote it. They just like let the things that the public choose go. Go and look who the people who founded Netflix are and where their families from. Like, this is literal social control. It's the opposite. It's why they can afford to waste money on products just to brainwash you with ideas and get certain ideas and to disclose certain concepts to your mind and to twist your desires and all the rest of it. There's even an element people never think about, which is the concept of a complementary business. One of the reasons I might create a bunch of TV series, Semmler, that never make money is because they promote values that make you buy a product that I already sell and make loads of money off. You won't see it because the dots are sort of the one is connected, but I could be killing it. As long as on my ledger at the bottom I'm making all the money, what the fuck do I care that you think I lost money on this thing here and it was about the arts and then you blame some fucking reviewer for why it didn't succeed?
Yeah, that's precisely it. All right, moving on. Toby, how do you think tactics have changed from CS 1.6 to CSGO? Did 1.6 have a team like Astralis? This is definitely more of a you question. I'm not.
Oh, it's hilarious. I mean, obviously, not everyone could have seen all my videos. I get it. The joke is, they literally had the original Astralis, not the one that was the finished one. The team Zonic played for was called MTW Denmark, and their leader was Ave, and he was just a leader like Glaive, and he was a genius in-game leader who could use himself to frag, and he had, are you ready? He had an AWPer that at one point in time was a rifler and went to a hybrid AWP, and this guy was called Thunder, and when he used to AWP, Semmler, are you ready? It wasn't that he was the best AWPer in the world, that was Kogu or Frod or someone, but he was the AWPer that within tactics worked the best, and he was incredibly mobile, and they would move in between one CT site at the beginning of the round, forget a pick, then they would rotate him to the other site, so you tried to get away from him, and he was waiting at the other angle, and they would set him up with flashes, and they were one of the first teams to master utility, and they had these amazing role players that could all win rounds like Zonic. Are you seeing anything familiar here? Well, Zonic was in that team, and later that's why they even got Trace. He was in a later version of MTW. Like, the joke is, this team already existed. That's where the blueprint for Danish CS came from. It's just that, obviously, the game was slightly different. Like, for example, you don't have Molotovs in 1.6. The smoke grenade isn't as powerful. Flashes work a bit differently. Like, you can hear through them, but they sort of stack if you throw a bunch on top of each other. And the game was a lot more about position. Like, it wasn't Pika's advantage. It was almost the opposite. It was like, if you had the off angle, you had the advantage. So actually, in 1.6, it was a lot about, like, positioning your players and then sort of chess move, punishing the other guy. It wasn't as much about, like, take the jiggle pick duel like Nico and headshot him instantly. Exactly. It was more like, I hold an angle, counter flash you, and then I kill you easily in the back. You're like, fuck. So actually, yeah, we had a team almost exactly like Astralis. I think it's essentially where Zonic took his ideas for Astralis.
Certainly sounds like it. It certainly sounds very familiar. Would explain a lot, in fact. All right, fair enough. All right, I'm not even going to try to contribute on this one. I have not watched nearly enough 1.6 to be able to give it any thought on that. All right, BZ, do you have any famous counter-strat stories to echo or that have never been told?
As in where someone like anti-stratted someone.
Anti-stratted somebody, yeah. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, whenever I think of anti-stratting, I just think of Pronax getting like so fucking mad. Who did he get mad at? Like some team, was it going into DreamHack Winter 2013 or 2014? Fuck. I think it was 2013 where he was holding onto a smoke, like, you know, it's one of those scenarios where it's just like it was a smoke that hadn't been figured out yet on Inferno, I think, a one-way on top of car, at top of banana, and somebody used it in an online game, and I just remember Pronax just being so fucking furious that they would waste, you know, like a new one-way on some worthless online match when it could be something that could obviously, you know, turn the tide on the major. I mean, it goes on to win the major, obviously, but like that was just one of those moments where it was kind of fun, you know, to get that window into the IGL, who was saving strats, you know, like really was like, okay, I have all these smokes that I'm saving for the major because nobody's using them yet, and then turns out somebody, you know. What do you have?
I've got a couple. So one is actually the team I referred to just before, 1.6, the MTW team, because what they mastered was they were amazing at like counter flashes. And so what they would do on the bomb sites, they would sit with their counter flash ready and they would comm really, really well. And if you tried to attack, they would counter flash, you would slow the attack down, you couldn't go in as well, and they'd be able to have all the setup and rotations and kill you, right? So the team that beat MTW and became number one was when Fnatic got Get Right and Gux, and they had this power front line of just like three of the best riflers that could just run in together and just shoot everyone in the head. What they realized was this: when they were on CT side or on T side, they could just play without utility. They could basically just like on CT side, when you're setting up to flash and go in on a set time, they'll just peek dry with a rifle and shoot you in the head while you've got the flashbang in your hand. Or when you go to counter flash them in the site, they just run onto the site and don't flash. They just do a contact play and just come on and shoot everyone and win all the duels. And by the way, if people don't know that particular scenario like that, in my opinion, that's why Team Liquid became the best in 2019. The game 2018 Astralis established was everyone has to use all these utility protocols, and it's like Inferno now. The beginning of the round is everyone goes to banana and throws a couple of smashes, a Molotov, a smoke. You get 2 or 3 peaks, you go back down, you throw another smoke, you wait, you see if you push up, right? What they did in Team Liquid was they had, again, so many skilled players and Stewie 2K who was just going to run through anyway, and they would just rush the site. They wouldn't use all the util. And so you were thinking, right, well, once I see the first smoke, that could be a setup, then there's the flash, I throw my counter flash. No, they would just run onto the site and shoot you. That's why, amazingly, the rounds they used to win that were impossible on Team Liquid 29 were the Deagle rounds. They would just have Deagles and 1 flash, and they would just shoot 3 people in the head. And the scenario there is not a counter strat, but it is a counter strat in the sense that, like, it's where tactics and strategy are different. The strategy, the meta game approach, that does destroy tactical teams. That does destroy a man advantage. That does destroy having more utility than me and being better than me. To create fights where there isn't a utility problem. It's like in the UFC. If you're in the UFC and you're fighting someone who's amazing at tactical fighting and point fighting, and they're all about like danger aversion and stuff, tell you what, that's the guy you want to just swing haymakers at and just crack. And you'll even risk that he knocks you out. Because what you want to do is you want to make it so his plan doesn't work anymore. So he's now in this like chaotic environment where anyone can lose. And at that point in time, you're willing to lose because now it makes it possible to win. So I would say there's a couple of like stylistic examples of it. Obviously, I don't in my brain know secret strats people did and go, I applied a different one on round 14. Yeah. It's not like anime, like,
yeah, exactly.
You didn't even know that I know that he knows like that. You're all fucking kids watching Netflix. Come on.
All right. Pirate mini idea. What kind of things, real or fictional, wanted to merge with our consciousness? Do you mean possess our minds, aka mind control? I guess this must be referring to something we've talked about in the past on the show. But
oh right, it probably means when we talk about like AI and using computers and stuff.
Yeah,
and the
probably
interaction
something along
sense.
those lines.
It's what I don't like about these questions, Sam. I'll just be straight up. You all want us to feed you like we're feeding you crushed applesauce, like you're a little baby, like, I've loaded it up, now let the plane in. You don't want to do any work. Here's the real question you'd ask if you cared to know that answer. If you weren't just some fucking tourist voyeur who's trying to get off on us telling you some sick, like, Hellraiser type story, and then the Cenobites come and torture you. Here's what you would ask. What books could I go and read to look into topics like that?
Yeah.
Or what sort of philosophy would actually let me know about, like, forces and powers and principalities in the world? If you actually cared, you'd ask that. So you just want me to say to you, the devil, so then you can go, look, he believes in that. Like, so I just don't believe it's a good faith question, mate. Like, what would you say? How would you explain it?
I don't care about it being I don't care. You know, I do say the devil, I do say demons, but I do like, okay, if you're interested in that sort of thing.
Does it have to be a literal thing though? Because here's the problem. Like the joke here is the whole premise of the spiritual domain is it isn't physical. But here's the best way to explain it. There's a really famous occultist. I won't tell you his name now because I actually think the occult's something that you shouldn't dabble in if you're not going to go hardcore. So if you're going to learn about it, you'll learn about yourself on your own fucking time, mate. Not from me telling you. But there's a very famous occultist who has a line, Sam, I think you will love. Now, in the occult, particularly the Western magical tradition, they have a concept that not only are there different realms and sort of spiritual levels, but they interact at the base level through your mind, the human imagination. That's like the base of what becomes the spiritual world. So what they would say is this, Semmler: all occult magic is in your head. It's just that your head, your mind, no, are you ready? All occult magic is in your mind, but your mind isn't only in your head. That's the fucking line. So the point there is, if your mind is like a modem to the spiritual dimension that goes beyond the physical, they don't need to be physical to interact with you. They just need to get in your mind. That's why, if you noticed, it isn't that they wanted from day one to put electrodes in your brain and communicate. They just want you to put certain symbols in your mind, ideas in your mind, to think certain thoughts, to hear certain jingles, to see literally occult symbols that are in logos and color schemes, and to think think those thoughts while thinking things like, I want to get rich too. I wish I was a successful person. I want to kill people and think. That's what you're doing when you watch certain shows. You're literally putting, like, people right now are watching shows where they're putting themselves in the mind of serial killers and going, this is just silly, frivolous thoughts. I can come out of this and I'm still the same person. Are you? I don't know if you are.
Well,
mate.
people won't stop talking about Narcos, for example. You know, it's like, oh, Narcos, amazing. It's like, did you notice that is after that? That's a whole series about some of the most murderous people on the fucking history of the world, and that are still running amok today in a literal war, pretty much going on the southern border of the United States. I mean, but that's a cool series, you know, like, oh, that's a great series, right? It's not about growing up to be an engineer or to be something good anymore. It's like, oh, I want to be like that. It's like, no, you don't. You definitely don't. But something wants you to think that, and that's. I'll give you two. Have you ever
noticed, Semmler, that when you watch those movies, Wolf of Wall Street, Narcos, fucking classic Wall Street, the original one, let me think what else. Basically, any movie, Blow, even though the premise of the movie at the end is supposed to be, it was a bad life, don't do it, he goes to prison, but here's the problem, that part doesn't seem to stick as much as the thrill of the part where he's doing the drugs, he's fucking the women. Somehow that part's super vibrant, and even though at the end you go, haha, yeah, of course I wouldn't do it, what you think actually is, well, I wouldn't be as silly as him, I'd get away with it, you know, like, or I wouldn't go as far as him, I'd just dabble in it a bit. Like, that's almost, like, the joke is those movies are adverts for drugs, mate, they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's adverts for that lifestyle, and to bring you down into that lifestyle, and then you at that point you just have to pray that you can get out of it, and that you can find your way out someday, and without suffering too much damage in the process as well. But that is 100% a thing.
I'll tell you a great line, by the way, about that sort of thing. Let me think how I was going to phrase this. Fuck, I forgot it there for a sec. Oh, there's a great line I once heard that totally changed my whole perception on prayer. Because the trick, again, of the atheist materialist structure is this. They don't actually take the premise seriously and think maybe there is a spiritual dimension. What do they do all the time, Semmler? Then why can't I test it in a material laboratory of a vacuum? Why can't I test it in this one way that I say is the only way that reality works? So what they do is they trick you into thinking, unless God is physically entering your brain, you aren't communicating with him. So there's a great line someone said, because what's great about this line is it might make you realize there doesn't even have to actually be a God for this to work. The line said that when someone prays, what changes isn't God, it's the one praying. So essentially, prayer itself can be a meditative technique, can be a way of releasing stress, of getting rid of your worries. That's the reason why I actually think worrying is really bad. It's sort of like playing out the worst scenarios over and over in your mind until you manifest them into your life and you think it's inevitable. So I think even just as a minimum thing, that's why there's a million stories, Semmler, that go like this. I didn't even believe in God, but then I was at my lowest and I said, God, if you're really out there, just give me a sign. And I prayed and I read my Bible. And you know what? After 3 days, something happened. Yeah. And then every idiot goes, well, something was bound to happen. No, sorry. People who are depressed at death's door, about to kill themselves, don't after 3 days randomly go, actually, my life's turned around. I think I'm going to live it and have a good life. That's one of those ones where even if it was fake, it's still a fucking good technique, innit? It's working like a motherfucker. It's like that famous one that always tilts me, the placebo effect. What it means is that nothing really, what it means is that somehow the desired effect happened without any scientific explanation. That's called magic, homie. That's called fucking spiritual, like, access or something. Like, yeah, it's a miracle. Exactly. Yeah. The joke is there are so many miracles surrounding you that because you have a different name and framework for what they are, you don't know they're miracles. And I'm not talking about aeroplanes and fucking computers. That's the opposite.
No, that's, I mean, dude, yeah. This is like still mega surface level on the topic, right? But, the idea that if you've made scientism, like you say, right, if you've made scientism the way, or the scientific method, even though clearly after the last 3 years, it's abundantly clear that the vast majority of people have no idea how even the scientific method works, let alone any of this. But if you can make it so that if you can convince people to think that, oh, only the smart people think in this fashion, and so if you think in this fashion, you're smart, and so you don't even bother, which is exactly how I was brought up, right? Which is why, it's like, this is precisely the way that I was raised to view the world. It's, you're never even going to ask the questions, because why would you? And so the battle's already won. You're not even trying. You're not even attempting to find out for yourself. You've already written it off completely because, oh, I can't touch it and feel it and see it. It's a really clever play. It's a really clever play, and it's exactly what's happening right now today, and it's clear as day. So that's one thing. The Lord of Spirits. It's a podcast I listen to. I think they're fucking amazing. It's really interesting stuff, and it gets nitty gritty sometimes. You have to be interested in the topic, but if you're interested in that sort of thing, The Lord of Spirits. It's a great podcast. All right.
By the way, you'd like this. I saw someone on that CSGO Leaks account. Here's what's different about that from all those shit. You know those really famous influencers that everyone loves to reference, and magically the CSGO account just so happens to interact with all the time, like they were one of them or in their friend group circle, but they're just not funny. They're people just stealing the same jokes from other people. The CSGO Leaks account actually has funny original content. So here's one that was brilliant. You know why I always complain about how Nico just has like the face like a slapped ass when anything happens? So here's the tweet. It just goes, report, Nico tilted after nephew misses simple jump throw lineup in basketball. It shows like a little kid. And it's Nico going like, oh, because that's what this fucker's like, isn't it? I know. It's like it's a little kid, you daft fuck.
Dude, the leaks, that has got to be one of my favorite accounts that I've found recently
that
has just started up, dude. I've been loving them. It's like them and the Babylon Bee. Like, it's just, there you go. Like, I'm good with those two. Solid. I got my CSGO covered. I got my real world covered. You know, we're good. All right. Oskvai. Let me see. Yeah, Oskvai. How big is the difference between Simple and Kenny S's peak?
What would you say? You watched them both. What would you say?
I mean, I watched a bunch of Kenny S. I watched a bunch of Simple. The thing is that I think Simple is just okay. Hold on. Contextually, I think that Simple has more tools to work with on his team right now because he, like you say, like last year, like would we even consider that last year was Simple's peak? I mean, we could.
Hard to tell, isn't it?
Hard to tell, but like electronic bit, you know, like he's got a system, he's got Blade's system, he's got electronic who knows that system, he's got bit, he's got the whole team is built around that, but he's got insane firepower on it. Whereas I feel like Kenny S in his prime was, I mean, well, Callie was hacking his tits off, but we had no way of knowing that. But like the whole team was pretty much built around Kenny S, right? He was kind of doing it alone. And like that was the joke, was the Pantamera tournament where he dropped like fucking 50 frags or something and still lost the series. And you're just in a map, you know, and still lost. You're just like, dude, there's not much more this guy can do. He needs some help. And so it's kind of hard to judge the peaks just because like, what are we judging by trophies? Well, then, you know, Kenny isn't going to be near Simple in that sense, but like by opping, because that's the thing, like Kenny was an amazing opper and you do everything you could to drop that op to him, but like rifle, like you don't think Kenny and you think rifle or you think pistol, you think op. Whereas with Simple, it's like you give that guy a toothpick and he's hitting a headshot with it. So if I were to put like peak in terms of like what the guy can do on the server right now, I feel like Simple, you kind of have to give Simple the props on this one because he's just a more complete player in terms of just all of the firepower that he has.
I've always said, even in the really great Navis, I wouldn't save. I would literally, if one person could buy an AK, I would always give Simple a hero AK. I think he's the only player in history where I reckon even the numbers would probably justify. You just win so many more rounds and he will just get you other guns by killing other people. Like, I know that's not the way anyone's ever going to play CSGO because it just seems too selfish. And even the coach would have a really hard time selling that to his teammates. Like, look, you just aren't as good and he really can do it by himself because it's going to make them seem like they're not doing anything. But I genuinely think in terms of like raw numbers, it would work. So the problem I have is this. Simple is the greatest outlier in the history of CS, of all the games. Like, there are other great players, but he is just above and beyond all of them. I will say it's a good comparison because I do think peak Kenny S was probably the closest in terms of raw peak compared to the second and third best players that we've ever seen. And that compares to Simple. Like, if Simple's number one in that sense, then Kenny S was also like number two in history of being the furthest ahead of everyone. So it's not a bad comparison, but you have to remember, Kenny S was a very good player, but he didn't, like, Simple's peak might be for what, like 4 years in a row. Kenny S's for like 1 or 2 years, and that's being generous maybe. He had to, because the problem is Kenny S had motivation issues. Simple, there's one thing you can never say. This guy's always grinded the game.
Yeah, that's like the consistency, just how fucking good he's been for how long. Because even if he wasn't like at the peak of the world, still Simple. Even like what? I was about to say like 10 years ago. Let's not go that far. But like 6-7 years ago, even then, you know, he was still a threat.
Yes.
And it's such a freakish thing how good he is.
Oh, it was 6 years ago, if people don't know, that he was taking Liquid to semifinals and finals of the majors.
Yeah,
that was 6 years ago.
Like, and that was a backpack situation. Like, they're not there without him just going
Yes.
batshit. So cool. All right. McClooney724. If you were GM of G2, would you not take a chance on config over JKS?
Oh, as in to upgrade off JKS.
Upgrade JKS. So config for JKS on G2 right now. The problem is just we don't know the extent of the damage with config's mental side.
I'll also just throw in there, G2 not really an org that can take a bad PR hit right now.
Yeah,
there is
too.
that. And then also, they don't really play the same roles at all, so I don't think that would work.
No.
The real problem with G2, and here's a prediction for you. If this lineup of G2 doesn't work, here's what will fuck G2, is that they're doing that thing that teams like Fnatic and Nip did for way too many years, which is what they do is this, Semmler. They go, right, it's only ever the fault of the people we cut. So that means Nico's untouchable, gets all his roles. Hunter's untouchable, gets his roles. Monacy's untouchable, gets his roles. But we'll keep bringing in other people for the other roles. Well, if I bring in config, it's going to be to do one of their roles. It's going to be to be the better player than them. So that's the issue is you can't just keep like putting the fifth one, because Nip and Fnatic, that's how they degraded, in my opinion. People who themselves were falling off got to stay, and they just kept cycling out the fourth and fifth players. So if you make a swap like that, config probably doesn't replace JKS. Like JKS seems like he's doing like shitty support roles at times. So if he comes in, it's probably to replace like fucking Nico or something in it. So I doubt they're doing that move personally.
I agree. All right, tea time. Is there going to be any way to pitch ideas to the LFN team if you're a content creator, talent, etc., assuming you don't already follow the person, have interacted with the person in the past, so there's no direct line of communication?
I've got a great answer for this, right? You're going to like this, Semmler, because it's another topic that keeps coming up. If you might have seen, it's in League of Legends, so I won't blame you if you didn't. In League of Legends, I did a short video with our editor, Adanian, which was about a player called Jensen, who just came back to play in the LCS, and he actually ended up winning the LCS.
It was really good.
And the whole point of it, right, you can tell when you watch this video, I actually care about Jensen as a person and as a player, and that I've known him for a long time. I know how his mind works. I know what his story is. I followed his whole narrative, his whole career, and that piece was clearly the output of a lot of passion on my part of sort of speaking. It's almost poetic, the quality of how I tried to express myself, right? So basically, I'll say it like this, Semmler. That was pure expression from me, Thorin, and all that I've built up in my life. It was basically like a dream project. What fans do is this. They don't know what dreams are, what expression is, what art is. They think it's all a commodity, and I only did it to get them to click like. And if they like it, that's what I'm trying to make. So what they tell me is this, Semmler. They go, you should do the next one about the player I like. And it's like, no, you misunderstood this completely. You should do a video about that guy because you really like him. I'll do a video about the ones I really care about. So basically, similar concept. You know how me and Monty said this company was our dream to make? Right? Why would my dream be to make your dream come true? I'm making my dream come true. I had to work decades to make my dream come true. So I'm going to hire the people I dream of working with. I'm going to do the projects I dream of doing. If you dream of working with me, you better make your dream happen. I ain't going to do it for you. So here's the thing. If you were really good and I found out by another method, maybe I would bring you to work with me. You can't apply. This isn't a fucking opening to mop up the floors in Starbucks, homie. This is my dream job. My dream isn't to enable you like some communist utopia to live your dreams out. You do your own dreams, homie. And by the way, every person I ever found, ever for 20 years, who out of nowhere messaged me and had never done anything in esports was always a waste of my fucking time. Because if you weren't a waste of my time, you wouldn't be so narcissistic. You would think as a nobody, you could apply to work with the greatest to ever do it. I am fucking simple of esports content. And you want to be my teammate instead of electronic? Fuck right off, mate. If you actually were good, you'd already have done something I'd have seen. You'd already be making content. By the way, people like Paladin, that guy has 300 YouTube subscribers. But I saw a video he did and I thought, this isn't bad actually. I saw some other content he was on. Hey, he actually has some thoughts. Maybe I'll bring him on an episode. That's how you make it in esports. You do it first and then people notice. You don't go, but I promise I can do, but I've got all these great ideas. You haven't. If you had, you'd try making them work. And if you try making them work and they were good, I'd see it. So essentially it'll take care of itself, mate.
Is about exactly it. I think everybody that I know that we've worked with over the years literally just started doing it and then got picked up, got noticed, got, something, and you were just doing it for the sake of doing it. You weren't out there like, oh, like asking for permission or anything. You were just doing it, and then somebody who was higher up, in my case James Harding, gave me a chance and then goes from there, right? So yeah, there you go. Slippy, last question. What would a perfect day look like for you, and does it include esports?
Probably not, right? If we're being real.
No, definitely not. Because that's just entertainment.
Like, you know what? I can't relate. One thing, look, I was never big on it anyway, but I can't relate to those people in our field, similar, like of the broadcast talent, where they talk almost like they have tears running down their face, like, to see the crowd at the major and everyone chat, like, listen, mate, it can be cool. It can be hype. I'm never, like, you know that famous tweet that everyone molded over, the DJ Vlad one? Like, look, if some of the best moments in your life were inside video games, like, you're a loser, basically. I agree with him wholeheartedly. I will not, at the end of my life, on my deathbed, as my life's flashing before my eyes, be thinking of the time I completed Zelda 64, the time I saw the ESL Cologne crowd cheer for, like, I won't, like, I hope I'll have had a much better life, and I have, than that, and I'll be able to cherish some really sick moments that I won't just sell out to people on the internet.
I think that is, yeah, you can't really answer the question, but I think that about sums it up, right? I mean, it's cool, but perfect? No, that's not where we're going with that one.
Have you ever had a day that you think was perfect or approached it?
Certainly, but but I don't. It's not like a specific day. It's just like, yeah, where I got to spend all of my time with my family or all of my time with my friends. You know, like a perfect day spent with family. Yeah, I've had days like that where I can think back and just be like, fuck yeah, spent the whole day with my family. We did something sick together. It was great. No fighting, no bullshit, just awesome day. Like, fuck yeah, that's a perfect day. So I'm not going to be like, and then we did this, and like, I'm not going to do that. Like, to me, it really is just, it boils down to just like the people in your life. Yeah. I don't know if you want to expand on it or
no, that's good. I think that's a good answer.
Good. Well, that was the last question of the GROGcoin holders. So thanks guys for the support, and thanks for the great questions. Great questions tonight. Good work. See what happens next week. But that's going to be it for a show this week. We'll be back next week, and I mean, barring anything unpredictable or we're getting on here. Unforeseen, any unforeseen change of circumstance, we will be back next Thursday evening. We'll be not trying to start at 19, but at 19:30 instead. So just make that adjustment. You'll have a little bit more time for dinner before the show. But yeah, we'll be back next Thursday, 19:30 with the stream. Thanks everybody listening and giving support. If you made it this far, subscribe, leave a like, leave a little comment. It does help with the channel. And, big thanks to everybody to tuning in every week. It's awesome. We're happy to do the content for you. So, Thorin, my dude, have a great one. And we'll see you guys next time.
Chris is not still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he can extend. Oh, and he gets a 3rd as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast. Zywoo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. And 5.